a couple weeks ago I was on with you guys, and I had heard a lot of rumblings that Torrey Krug would potentially be willing to waive that no-trade clause. In the past 24 hours, what I found out yesterday is that is not accurate at this time, that Torrey Krug at this time is not willing to waive his no-trade clause. And so, is that posturing? Is that, the negotiation that goes back and forth with the negotiation? There could be a lot of things involved. But the bottom line is, at this time, he's not willing to waive that no-trade clause.
That was Jeremy Rutherford with a significant report earlier today on the opening drive with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. No movement yet on Torrey Krug. The update is there is no update. We are today where we were at this point last year. Torrey Krug doesn't want to go anywhere. The Blues would like him to go somewhere else. They told you that with their actions, not their words last year. And they're telling you that once again this year with their actions. The Blues' current left-handed defensemen include Torrey Krug, Nick Leddy, Tyler Tucker, Scott Perunovich, P.O. Joseph, and Ryan Suter. Guys, I'm no mathematician, but that feels like one, maybe two too many on the left side for you going into this season. Your right side is basically set. Parayko, Falk, and Kessel. In one order or another, those are going to be your right side defensemen most likely this season. So it comes down to what do you do on the left side, and these guys are all options for you, but there's too many of them. So Jeremy Rutherford was then asked, okay, what does this mean then? If Krug doesn't want to waive his no-trade clause, the Blues have brought in Ryan Suter, who's going to join us coming up at noon. They signed P.O. Joseph. They brought back Perunovich. They still have Leddy and Tucker. What is their plan?
I just think this speaks to a move being done at some point. Who knows if it's imminent or if it's going to take another week or two or month, but every indication that I've been told in doing my homework the past couple of days for this article that I wrote yesterday is that most people don't expect Torrey Krug to be on the roster on opening night.
So there you go. That's his speculation based upon background information that he's heard. Alex, my personal belief, and this is, again, just reading the tea leaves, I said this the moment that they signed Ryan Suter, I think Torrey Krug is going to be waived. Or they will say, Krug, we are going to waive you if you do not waive your no-trade clause. And so it's going to be a threat from Doug Armstrong, and for the first time, it doesn't feel empty. For the first time, it feels like they're actually willing to do something here. That's where I'm at. I think something will happen before opening night, and it's the first time that I've believed that over the past 2 years. I have been steadfast of there's no alternative here. What are you supposed to do? He doesn't want to waive his no-trade. The Blues don't have an alternative for him. What are you going to do? Well, now they do. They brought in Ryan Suter, who can play legitimate top 4 minutes for you. Where are you at with this right now, Alex?
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. I think the other factor to know with all these guys is every single one of them have to clear waivers. There's nobody that is exempt from waivers. So you're talking about having to send guys down that you're most likely going to lose, and that falls into the line of if you put Scott Perunovich through waivers, he's probably going to get claimed. P.O. Joseph might get claimed, and then Tyler Tucker. I don't think you're going to get claimed, but you never know with something like that, and it seems they love him. So now you get to the point where you look at the other three guys in Parayko, Falk, Leddy, and Suter, and I don't think any of those are going to go through waivers. So it all comes back to Torrey Krug, and this feels like it's to the point, and this is just total tinfoil theory here, but this feels like it's to the point where the Blues loaded up on left-handed defensemen as a threat to Torrey Krug of, look, you're not going to be playing on this team this season. So you can do two things. You can not accept a trade to a team that we can find for you where you can go play the NHL this season, or you can go to the American Hockey League. And I know it seems like an empty threat because Doug doesn't do these things, but he has in the past. And I always go back to the Doug Waite one where he basically told him, go to the minors or go to Anaheim, and you get to pick. And because they told him he's going to waivers, he went to Anaheim. I don't know if that happens here. What I can tell you is I don't see Torrey Krug playing for the Blues this season. Leddy and Parayko are going to stay together. Justin Falk is you most likely are going to see him play with Scott Perunovich or Torrey Krug. I think it's going to be more Scott Perunovich because he signed the contract, and now you got Ryan Suter and Matt Kessel with P.O. Joseph and Tyler Tucker. This team is not going to carry 9 defensemen on their roster this season because that means you can only carry 12 forwards or 13 forwards. They're going to have to carry a couple of extra forwards, so I do think this is the end of Torrey Krug in St. Louis. I just don't know how it's going to end.
That's where I am. It feels like the end, but I don't know how it's going to end. I don't think it's going to be waivers because I don't think Army's going to do it. If I'm Torrey Krug, I'm calling the bluff today. I'm saying I'm not waiving my no trade. You want to put me through waivers, do it because I don't think you're going to do it. I know Army threatened Wait about it. Doug Armstrong's talked a big game of buyouts. He's not going to do a buyout. He's talked the big game of waivers. I don't think he's going to do the waiver route either. I don't think the Blues organization as a whole wants to pay Torrey Krug $6.5 million to go skate around and be the nice representative for the Springfield Thunderbirds. I just don't see it coming. I don't see that happening. I think they're going to try and explore a trade, see if they can work with Torrey Krug and get a deal done. And if they don't, I think Torrey Krug's going to be here on opening night, and I think they're going to move a Tucker down to the minors or a Joseph and Perunovich down to the minors.
I view this as very different than a buyout. I think the buyout conversation is very different than sending a guy through waivers because a buyout, there's no taking it back. Once you buy a guy out, especially for somebody the length of Torrey Krug, you are on the hook for 6 years, paying him $14 million over those 6 years. So $2.5 million per year for the next 6 years, you're paying that to Torrey Krug. No getting out of that. You're paying him $14 million to play somewhere else. This is different. This is sending him through waivers, and if nobody were to claim him, and I think somebody would, I'm convinced, and maybe I'm wrong on this, I think somebody like the San Jose Sharks would say, we'll take it on. What the hell? It's 3 years. Next year, it's a modified no trade. Whatever. Let's see what it looks like for us. It's not like they have any salary cap issues. They're more needing to get to the floor than they are like worried about the ceiling. So if you're the Blues and you send him through waivers and nobody claims him, that's the worst case scenario for you, right? You can always bring him back up midway through the season if Scott Perunovich were to get hurt. You could always bring him back up towards the end of the year, and then he's on your roster next season, and then you've got a modified no-trade clause, and next year you can add a draft pick and do what you did this offseason with Kevin Hayes. And now he's got 2 years left, and you can eat half of his salary and is making $3 million for somebody else, and he can only block a trade to half the league. So now you're not eating the same amount of money that you would have otherwise. I think a buyout is much more drastic. I think a buyout is much more prohibitive for the St. Louis Blues. I don't view this the same way. I think putting him through waivers feels much more realistic to me.
Yeah, I do too. I think the waivers seems like a threat, but it's only a threat. Like the buyout, it seems like it's an empty threat because, yeah, it's like I know you won't do that, so go ahead. Going through waivers doesn't really impact the Blues. We're paying you either way. And if you decide you don't want to play for the Springfield Thunderbirds, well, that benefits us. But if you are upset about that, well, then we should have facilitated a trade. And by the way, if he's in the minors, you can still facilitate a trade with that player. Buyout, you're buying him out and you're paying him, like BK mentioned, for 6 years. It really comes down to the Blues looking at this, and it's the stalemate with Torrey Krug. It's, I don't want to go play for anybody else. That's fine. But understand, you're going to be playing for somebody else next season because your no trade becomes a limited no trade.
You ain't playing here.
Exactly.
You can play for Springfield. You can play for San Jose.
You can play for the new Florida team we just got.
Yeah, exactly. But when that modified becomes modified next year, it's, hey, I've got these 15 teams that you have no say in, and these teams are calling me. But right now, you can talk to me about what team would you like to play for. Yep. Otherwise, you're going to be playing in the American Hockey League.
And you better be realistic, Torrey Krug, because I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Like, Edmonton ain't taking you. Boston probably ain't realistic. Florida, they're not taking you. Like, there are teams that are capped out right now, or they just don't want Torrey Krug. They don't have a place for him on their roster. So you better be realistic about where you can get a job right now if it's not going to be here in St. Louis. This is cold, man. This is cold-hearted if you're Doug Armstrong, but it's business. And this is the way that they're going to have to operate if they want to remove that salary, that spot from their books.
The salary cap floor is $66 million, if I'm not mistaken. That means the Anaheim Ducks are under it still. That means the Calgary Flames are $1 million over it. The Red Wings are $2 million over it. The Blue Jackets, the Sharks, the Sabres, the Hurricanes. All these teams have $10+ million in cap space. So if I'm Torrey Krug, and yeah, I understand, T-Bone, if I'm Torrey Krug, I'll call your bluff. But I also made it.
That's smart.
I also made it very clear last season that I didn't want to go somewhere that I didn't want to pick up my family and leave to. Now the threat of waivers, when there's 5 other left-handed defensemen, you look at those teams and you say, do I really want to go play for one of those teams? And maybe I end up in the American Hockey League, but the matter of fact is the Blues are not going to carry more than 8 defensemen on their roster because that means they're carrying less than 12 forwards, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, to me, like, the roster spot is honestly what they're worried about here. It's not even about the money anymore. Like the money, it's a sunk cost. You're paying him $6.5 million this year, and there's no getting around that. That's going to be on your cap sheet. The problem, if you're the Blues, is, okay, so what do we do with these defensemen that we actually want to find out what they can do for us? What do we do with Leddy and Tucker and Perunovic and P.O. Joseph? And clearly they see value in Ryan Suter. And Ryan Suter, again, will join us coming up at 12 o'clock. Whether you agree with him or not, it doesn't really matter. They see value in having him on this roster. And I think it's pretty clear based upon their actions and bringing in all of these other players, they don't see the value any longer with Torrey Krug. Yeah. It just hasn't worked.
To me, it seems like the coaching staff is looking at this as the competition for one starting spot on the left side, and it's between P.O. Joseph and Scott Perunovic, because Suter's already in the lineup and Leddy's already in the lineup, and Tyler Tucker is your extra defenseman. Tyler Tucker is Marco Scandella last season. So now I don't believe that the coaching staff is viewing this as Torrey Krug's fighting for this spot. We've got these guys, and whoever wins that competition is going to be starting for us.
Our text line is 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You guys can check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. That's where the graveyard chat is off and running. We did get this text from the 636. Guys, who's this coming from? Is it the agent? Why would you want to stay where people don't want you? He holds the cards. Pick a team that's realistic and get out. I don't blame Torrey Krug or his agent for playing it this way either.
Absolutely not.
I think both sides are doing exactly what they should be doing right now. The Blues have found a way to actually have leverage for the first time in the Torrey Krug negotiations. They have options. The old saying, you're as faithful as your options, that's what the Blues are doing right now. They have finally some legitimate left-handed options to play instead of Torrey Krug. So now they can legitimately threaten, we'll put you through waivers for the first time. And if I'm Torrey Krug, if I want to be here, like Torrey Krug might, this is something that is kind of hard for me, is like, dude, I feel kind of bad for Torrey Krug in this spot. If I'm him, and what he's basically telling everybody in St. Louis is, guys, I want to play for the Blues. I signed here. My family is comfortable here. I want to play for the team that I signed with. I have a no trade clause, which allows me to say I don't want to go elsewhere. I don't blame him for exercising that right. He should. You should say, I don't want to go anywhere else. If you want to send me through waivers, go ahead. I don't believe that you're going to do it. I'm going to be on the Blues in 2024.
He's doing it for his family, too. Like, I think that's the other important part. He's not holding out to screw the Blues over. He's doing it because of what he said last year. I don't want to get moved somewhere and have to uproot my entire family. And look, the guy has earned the opportunity to do this, just like we talked last season. So I do feel bad for Torrey Krug, because it's always pointing fingers at, well, he needs to agree to move his trade contract and they need to get off of the books. And I mean, the guy is just wanting to play hockey in St. Louis. And I saw a couple of texts come in and say, well, what happens if he just doesn't go to the American Hockey League? He gets suspended and he doesn't get any money. So
he's reporting.
He's got $6.5 million reasons.
Let's the other factor into this too is if they do send him to the minors, I would imagine Torrey Krug's probably looking at this like, fine, because it's in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is back to where he used to live with Boston. So
his options are, I get to live where I want to live in St. Louis, or I get to live where I want to live in
still get paid money. So like, I do think Torrey Krug's probably looking at this and being like, fine, do it. The real threat is, what if a team picks me up? And that's why you at least consider facilitating the trade.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Plenty more Blues coverage throughout the day today, including a conversation with the newest Blue, Ryan Suter, defenseman that just signed with the Blues the other day. He's going to join us coming up at 12 o'clock. Be sure to tell your friends. Ryan Suter joins us at noon today. Coming up next, we got to talk a little bit of Major League Baseball draft. We've seen your text. We got to talk about it. Cardinals have the number 7 overall pick. There's 2 pitchers that are worth that slot. Are either of them going to be available when the Cardinals come up? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, yeah, we got to talk some Major League Baseball draft because the draft is just a couple of days away. The Cardinals have a top 10 pick for the first time since J.D. Drew was a selection for them. So, yeah, it's been a minute since they've been able to select this high. They have the number 7 selection in this year's draft. They do not have a second-round pick because they signed Sonny Gray. Worth it, I would say, so far.
Aww.
This is also not a very good draft. Based on everything that I've read, there is nobody in like the Paul Skenes range, for example. There's no generational talent. There's no obvious number 1 pick. There's still people wondering who the Cleveland Guardians are going to select at number 1, and we're a couple of days away. So that should tell you a lot about where we're at with this year's draft. There's also, from what I've read, a pretty significant drop-off after like the 20th pick. There's like 20 guys that you feel pretty good about, and then there's a drop-off, and then you get to like 40, and then there's another significant drop-off. So it's not the worst thing in the world that the Cardinals don't have a second-round pick this year. What is interesting to me, Alex, about the pick at number 7 for the Cardinals, I think the obvious candidates would be 2 of the pitchers that are coming from college. Chase Burns, right-handed pitcher out of Wake Forest. Hagen Smith, left-handed pitcher out of Arkansas. Based on every single scouting report that I've seen so far, those are the only 2 pitchers that are worth the pick at number 7. So it's got to be one of those 2. Here's the problem. Chase Burns almost always in every mock draft that I've seen goes ahead of the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. So he's probably not going to be there at number 7. And then it comes down to what is your scouting report on Hagen Smith? Do you think that he is somebody that can legitimately be a front-end starter? And it seems like a lot of people are split on that. Some view him as a potential number 2 upside. A lot of people seem to view him as like mid-rotation at best. And so that's where things get a little dicey. Alex, when you look at this year's draft, is it like pitcher or bust for you in a best-case scenario?
No, I don't think it can be pitcher or bust when you're picking top 10. Like, I as much as I know that this team needs like the upside of a number 1 legit pitcher, you got to go with the best available player, and in my opinion, the best upside of a player. So if there's a position player, and I don't know if it's any of these infielders, it sounds like all of these outfielders / first basemen that project to be like big-time bat MVP-esque players are going to be gone before it even gets close to you. You got to go with what the best upside is for the number 7 overall pick, because to me, you can't ruin that pick, but I also don't know if you can go a safe play on that pick, because 7 overall should be an impactful piece for your organization's future.
Yeah, I don't think you need to necessarily go pitcher or bust, because my biggest fear then is you potentially reach if you're looking for. Sure. Like if Smith and the other one, Burns, come off the board and they're looking at it, oh my gosh, we got to draft a pitcher.
I don't think you can draft another pitcher.
I don't think you can either. I don't. The worst thing you can do with the 7th overall pick is reach. And that's where if one of those guys is there, I think if Burns or Smith somehow fall to you, yeah, I think you take one of those 2 guys. I think they can come in and have the potential to be a number 1. If not, worst case scenario, probably a number 2. I think if they're not there, I think you're just taking best available player. And I don't even care what position he plays. He can be a shortstop, and you may be saying, well, we have Mason Wynn for the future. Don't care. That kind of athlete, you can eventually move him around the infield. Look what they've done with a lot of their prospects. Gorman came up as a third baseman. Walker came up as a third baseman. You get to that 7th pick, those pitchers aren't there. I just want the best available player, and I wouldn't mind a swing for some upside.
You want to hear some upside?
Yeah, let's
Speaking
do
of
it.
swing and miss?
Yeah.
Hagen Smith, the guy that people are split on.
I like this dude.
160 strikes in 84 innings this year. And he did that in the best conference in America.
And he already had
SEC
Tommy
is
John
like
surgery.
playing in like AA or high A ball. Yeah. That's essentially the level of play that he has.
I wish you heard Bowden's like backhanded compliment today about the SEC. He's like, yeah, it's good. Not that great this year, but it's good.
I mean, college baseball in general, like compared to what it was a year ago, was not.
I bet
at the
Mizzou
same
hit
level.
him though, right?
We should get his coach on.
That's not nice. We don't need that. We'll probably try to get the coach on of whoever they end up taking.
You know we're going to get his grade school coach, his high school coach.
First round pick at number 7 overall. Yeah, I'm going to try to reach out to their
teammates.
college coach. That is absolutely going to be in play for next week. He did undergo Tommy John surgery in high school, so that's not ideal. It's not what you want.
Right,
but it's been a few years. You're good. Yeah, like it's a rite of passage. You don't have to worry.
It's
about
like when
that
you get your driver's license 16. You get into an accident the first year, and you don't have to worry about it ever again.
So the other player that I find to be really interesting for the Cardinals is a kid by the name of Bryce Rayner. And I call him a kid because he's like the top high school prospect, according to most of the scouts out there. He's a 2-way prospect. He pitches, and he plays shortstop / center field. He's got a cannon of an arm, throws mid-90s, potentially could project as a reliever at the major league level, maybe even a starter, but it seems like most of the scouting reports that I've read say reliever or shortstop / center fielder, corner outfielder. He's bigger than Mason Wynn. He's 6'3", $195 already at this point in his career. But he does have a similar scouting report. Plus arm, hits for average, has a little bit of pop in there as well, and two-way player. I am always curious when I see stuff like this, where like if you have a certain profile of player that succeeds within your system, are you then more likely to go for another player that reminds you of that guy because you've seen it succeed elsewhere? So for the Cardinals, they watched Mason Wynn come into the system in 2020 in that draft, and then within the past 3 years, work his way through the system as a high school player, get to the major league level, and we're already seeing him leading off for the team as a potential all-star candidate this year. He was a legitimate all-star candidate in 2024. Do they then look at Bryce Rayner, who's not the same player as Mason Wynn, it needs to be stated, but has a similar type of a profile as a shortstop / center fielder / big arm, pitching prospect, two-way player in high school with big tools? Do they look at that and say, we've seen this succeed in our system. This is the route that we should go if one of those two arms isn't there for us, Alex? Do you think there's something to that?
I mean, yes. When you have success in your organization, you're going to be like, okay, let's see if we can chase this once again and go out there and get another difference maker. Like, I do think that that's an area you have to explore if you're making this selection. The problem with that, at least for me, is I think that's a good move if you're in the middle of the draft, to where and maybe he doesn't even fall that far in the middle of the draft. But it feels like when you're going for a younger player that, doesn't have that ceiling like an MVP-esque player, but
nobody has that in this draft.
Agreed, 100%. But there's like power, and there's like legit like stud, and then there's Rayner, where it feels like, yeah, we're talking about a guy who's going to be a really good piece for a team moving forward. I just personally feel like when you're picking in the top 10, I'm going highest ceiling possible. And even though like we're seeing Mason Wynn right now and he's a difference maker, that pick feels like a safe pick to me.
Oh, I disagree. I think this is a huge risk. Anytime you're going with a high school player, especially in a draft that is dominated by mostly collegiate players, like the top 12 from everything that I've read seems like it's almost exclusively college players other than Bryce Rayner. And then there's one other kid, Connor Griffin, who basically every scouting report that I've seen for what the Cardinals are going to do this year, every mock draft is, not going to take Connor Griffin. Not going to take Connor Griffin. I don't know what's going on there, like why they hate this Connor Griffin kid. He's an outfielder from Jackson Prep in Mississippi, but apparently the Cardinals hate him. But other than that, it's like a bunch of college players and then Bryce Rayner. So this would be a massive risk in my opinion, but you're potentially betting on upside. You've got this cannon of an arm. He's shown significant power right now. He's 19 years old. You don't know what it's going to look like 3-4 years from now. They've had some success in this type of a player. They had success with this with Mason Wynn. They had success betting on upside with Jordan Walker, with Nolan Gorman. Now, all of those players profiled differently. One was a pure power hitter in Nolan Gorman. Another was look at the tools and the size with Jordan Walker and dream on that. Look at the athleticism. And then you've got Mason Wynn, who had this cannon of an arm, two-way prospect. We know the story now. Bryce Rayner is more in that realm. He's that type of a guy. So if that's what the Cardinals end up doing at number 7 overall, I do wonder if some of the influence, some of the thoughts of what it looks like for Mason Wynn at the major league level maybe influence the way that they decided to go at number 7 overall.
Yeah, I wonder if that will be kind of the route they go, because it does feel like what you said, you kind of fall into that nuisance of, oh, we've done that before, we can do it again. I don't know if I would operate that way. I would personally probably avoid Rayner, read more on his scouting report today. Struggles with high velocity. Well, you know what's not going to get easier once he starts to develop?
He got better this year, right, man?
No, he scares me. And you're right about the high school kid. I would much rather go more of the collegiate route, just because those guys don't take as long to develop. These high school kids, sure, they're worth a swing. Are they worth a swing at the 7th overall pick, though? And if you're Randy, I'm fascinated to know how Flores approaches this, because it certainly sounds like his job might be on the line with this draft.
It's a big draft.
And he can't draft scared, and that's what's going to make this interesting for the Rayner, or reaching on a pitcher, or if one of those pitchers is there, but also Rayner, what do they do? I'm fascinated to know how Randy Flores approaches this.
All right, so ESPN.com did a piece. This is from our friend Jesse Rogers, who covers the Cubs up in Chicago, but does a bunch bunch of stuff for ESPN.com. Alex, I know you love comparisons, right?
Absolutely.
So
Who
you get
doesn't?
into the draft season, and they compared some of the top prospects. Now, a lot of these guys haven't really been connected to the Cardinals, but the two that have is the two pitchers. So I wanted to give you the comparisons that they had for the two pitchers. I love when people do this because it's always future Hall of Famers. Like, it's exclusively, what does the upside look like?
Listen to Jim Bone this morning. I was like, man, there are a ton of all-stars in this draft.
So Chase Burns, right-handed pitcher out of Wake Forest, power arm. Here are his comparisons according to ESPN.com. Dylan Cease is the top comparison. Others that are mentioned, Hunter Green, Corbin Burns, Tyler Glasnow, Walker Buehler, Bobby Miller. So in other words, he's big, he throws hard, he has a slider. That's essentially what those comparisons tell you.
All right, I'm in.
So
Can't pass up on Corbin Burns.
a power arm with big upside is what one evaluator said about him. Hagen Smith, lefty from Arkansas. Gonna go out on a limb and say, could Chris Sale be one of the comparisons that maybe he gets?
Reading his scouting report certainly feels like that.
Top comparison, Carlos
Tell me
Rodon.
Randy Johnson.
Oh, Carlos Rodon.
Others mentioned
Interesting.
Chris Sale, Josh Hader, Robbie Ray, Blake Snell.
Oh, yes. You're right. I want him.
An electric fastball, unique delivery. Some people make parallels to Chris Sale. I don't see the connection because Sale's slider has more movement on it. He's more of a hybrid between Sale and Rodon, in my opinion.
Oh, a hybrid between those two?
Hey, man, if that's what the Cardinals are getting at number 7, if they're able to select one of those two starters and they fit into the mix starting rotation-wise within the next couple of years, now you've got that added to Sonny Gray, added to maybe one other guy that they're able to get either at the
Eric
deadline
Fetty.
and next offseason. All right, now we're talking. Now I can get excited
He
about
would
what the
be
future holds.
atop my draft board.
I'd be shocked. if
Hagen
it's one of
Smith?
those two.
Yeah, Hagen Smith.
Or Chase Burns?
Hagen Smith would be.
Really? Lefty?
Oh,
Well,
you know he's at the top of the Cardinals board.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't have a lot of those guys.
My guess.
Mine would be, I would want Burns 1,
I just
Smith 2.
I like Burns. I mean, I started to burn it for Burns, but I don't. Everything I've read says Colorado's taking him.
Yeah.
So I just don't see how that guy's even going to be there. So realistically, I don't see him there.
Tinfoiling here, I bet those two go top 5. That's my guess. Because when you talk about those kind of arms with those kind of comparables, last year Skenes was not viewed as number 1 until like the very end. And it's because a lot of these teams, once you get higher, like Colorado, for example, they are shooting more for we need to draft and develop a top-end arm rather than draft and develop a top-end bat.
Last guy that I would be interested in is the gentleman by the name of J.J. Weatherholt. He might go number 1 overall. He's got hamstring issues,
That's always
2
good.
significant hamstring injuries in the past year, but a big-time bat. Hit 370 this year for West Virginia. He profiles as a middle infielder, can play shortstop, has played some second base, has played some third as well. Real contact ability. That would be, if they're going position player and the pitchers are gone and he's still available, that would be my top choice.
This kid Montgomery's name has been brought up a couple of times too. Outfielder, I think Texas A&M. That
Right
one's
fielder.
another one. Yeah, right fielder with a bat, power.
I've seen him all over the place.
Yeah, I've seen him go like 2. I've seen him go like 10. He's been all over, but I mean, I just think you got to go with the best upside with what's available. Like I would have Hagen Smith at number 1, but then beyond that, like we got to be. I just think 7 overall has to be somebody that could be a cornerstone for your team.
They can't miss.
Yeah.
You cannot miss this year. This has to be somebody that factors into your future. No doubt about it. He's Alex's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, ask us anything. We've got Ryan Suter joining us at the top of the hour. But coming up next, some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN.
Tara Hendricks Near the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals back in action tonight as they have a 4-game set with the Chicago Cubs this weekend. 7:15 will be first pitch tonight. Kyle Hendricks will be on the mound for Chicago, and Sonny Gray will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. We'll get to Ask Us Anything. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line in less than 10 minutes. And Ryan Suter, Blues' new defenseman, joins us coming up at 12 o'clock. Alex, over on ESPN.com, we've been going through. They're ranking the top 10 at each position right now based upon what they're hearing from executives around the league, coaches, and scouts. Today's updated list is the NFL's best tight ends.
Love it. Love me a good tight end.
No surprise here. Number one on that list is Travis Kelce. I think we're all in agreement that that's the case, right?
Yeah.
Best tight end in the league still.
The tier list should be him and then space and then the next one.
It's kind of
Maybe
like
another space.
it's kind of like running backs to me, like Christian McCaffrey. Boom, number one, and then we can have a conversation about what comes after that.
Yeah.
Now, I think if you're going regular season only, there's a little bit more debate, just because like last year you saw a step back,
Sure.
but that could have been him. Like, dude, the regular season boring.
Then I saw him run in the Super Bowl, and I was like, I haven't seen that man in like 5 years.
The Eras tour has been going on, so at the time,
I get it, man. A lot going
Did
on.
you see him last night?
You want a karaoke thing or something? And
Said,
he gave
this
credit
one's
to-
for you, Taylor. I love that man so much. Never retire,
I
Travis.
want to be Travis Kelce.
Oh, I want to be Jason Kelce. That man's got the life.
He does too.
He's doing
Just
okay.
does a podcast, looks good with that beard.
They're both in
I
that
would sign up for his
celebrity
beard.
golf tournament right now.
They got the life.
Yeah, it's not a bad way
I like to
live.
think of us as the Kelce brothers.
You think so?
Yeah, I think we
Who
profiled.
would you be? Would you be Travis or
No,
Jason?
Jason.
You're more Jason? I think you're more Travis.
You looking at T-Bone or me?
You.
Oh,
Surely me. You kidding me? Travis
Anyway.
is a partier.
Let's get into the rest of this
they're
list.
both partiers.
Yeah. I actually think the tight end position is deeper now than it has been in quite some time. At number 2, they had George Kittle. Number 3, Mark Andrews. Number 4, local product, Sam Laporta. Number 5, TJ Hawkinson. Number 6, David Njoku. And then from there, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Kincaid, feels a little high for him, Evan Ingram, and Dalton Schultz. Other guys that received votes, Trey McBride, Pat Freiermuth, Kyle Pitts, RIP, etc.
What happened? He didn't die.
Kinda.
What happened,
He
man?
went to the NFL.
Alex, who would you have right now at 2 and 3?
I would flip George Kittle and Mark Andrews.
Really, you'd have Andrews too.
And I would imagine part of the reason they did that is just Mark Andrews' injury history is part of it. But like Mark Andrews, when he's right, is a difference maker for that offense. Like he is the red zone threat. He is the guy that takes Baltimore from a really good team to a this team could dominate in the playoffs type of team, if not for Lamar Jackson. And I like George Kittle. I just think Mark Andrews is a different level when he's right. And so I would have Mark Andrews 2 and then George Kittle 3. And I like the fact that they put Sam Laporta 4. He was the one I was going to say has to be top 5.
Yeah, I would probably stick with Kittle 2 just because of the injuries to Andrews. And then I would go Andrews 3, Laporta 4, and then Hawkinson 5. I might actually flip Hawkinson to 5. I'm a huge TJ Hawkinson fan. I think he's an underrated tight end at his position, but he's coming off of a major knee injury, which is going to knock him down in these rankings. I think Sam Laporta's got a chance to move into the top 3 potentially at the end of this year, but I think after 5 is a big drop-off. I'm not big on David Njoku.
No, I'm not either.
That's so funny. I was about to say, you know who I think's really good, so much better than people will give him credit for, is David Njoku.
He feels like he has just that hot streak of like 6 or 7 games, and that's about it for David Njoku.
I wish he was in a better offense. Like, think of the quarterbacks that he's played with in his NFL career.
Yeah, Joe Flacco.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like the best one that he's had in recent seasons. Joe Flacco, Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson. Like, they have had some terrible quarterbacks for him to play with in Cleveland. I so badly wish David Njoku could be on a really good offense with a quarterback that knew how to use him correctly. He just doesn't get the targets that some of these other players have. Like, you like TJ Hawkinson. I think TJ Hawkinson is a really good player as well. I like him a lot. TJ Hawkinson has 127 targets last year. That's a ton, man. David Njoku finally got that last year. Before that, it was like 50 to 80 every season of his NFL career. And some of that's on him. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to be a part of the offense. I just think I think he's underrated. So he would be a guy that I would probably have higher than many would. I think I would have at number 2 on my list. I know it sounds kind of crazy. I would consider moving a guy like, what's his face? Sam Laporta up there already. I think he's already one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And I think this is a position where you get better with age. Very few positions can I say that about, but I think 3, 4, 5 years in, that's when you start seeing what guys are in their respective NFL careers. So I would have Laporta higher than what he is on this list.
I think Laporta by the end of the season is going to be number 2.
Another guy that I would have higher than what they do is Trey McBride. Trey McBride, the second half of last year, tight end for the Arizona Cardinals, was amazing. Now, he had no target competition on that team, but I think people are sleeping on just how good he is. I also think Kyle Pitts should be a top 10 tight end.
You just said RIP.
I know.
Just kill him.
You're gonna
see what he looks like.
I did find it interesting. I'll never forget this. And that's why I'm probably avoiding him in fantasy this year. Is when Mostert was Mostert. Is that his name?
Yep.
Morris.
Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, Mostert. Sorry, whoever the coach is in Atlanta.
Oh no, that's Raheem Morris.
Morris. Thank you. I was
thought
like,
you were
man,
talking about the
Mostert
running
felt
back.
wrong. No, Morris. When Morris got hired in Atlanta, I'll never forget when they were asked about the offensive tools, and he went, "Yeah, we got to get Robinson involved. We got to get London involved," and then never said Kyle Pitts' name. And I was like, okay, that tells me that he's out on Kyle Pitts. I'm out on Kyle Pitts.
I think he'll be back in. All right. The other thing that I wanted to bring up here.
Rip.
Does Brady Cook have an NFL future?
Next question. No.
If J.J. McCarthy has an NFL future, then Brady Cook has an NFL future.
So I was reading yesterday on The Athletic, and I think their NFL draft reporter does excellent work. It's Dane Brugler. He's awesome. He put out his preseason top 25 senior quarterbacks. At number 1 on that list, it's T-Bone's favorite player in college football, Carson Beck.
God, he's so boring.
Number 2 is Shedeur Sanders. Number 3, Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, previously with Duke. Number 4, Jackson Dart with Ole Miss. Number 5, Cam Ward with Miami. It's not a very good quarterback class, to put it mildly.
I'd say.
He had Brady Cook at 19. Am I a homer? Is that way too low? I feel like Brady Cook could go to the NFL and have a 10-year career as a backup. I don't think he's ever going to be anything more than that. But, like, they've got Graham Mertz at number 7 on this list. Will Howard, formerly of Kansas State, now Ohio State, at number 8 on this list. Tyler Van Dyke, who stinks and lost his job at Miami, at number 10 on this list. Kyle McCord, who stunk it up at Ohio State, is number 13. KJ Jefferson, who I don't even know if he's going to be a quarterback in the NFL, at number 16. DJ Uiagalelei.
Oh, that guy really
He's on his
stinks.
7th school in college. He's at number 18. My boy Brady Cook is at 19.
Yeah, that feels low.
I think he's going to rise that, though, throughout the season.
Okay.
Yeah,
Throughout the season, I think you're probably talking about closer to the top 10. I'm with you. I think he's for the types of quarterbacks that we see get at least a start. I mean, he's my guy, too. MIZ. Only when they're good. When they're bad, I don't like that team.
You're not a real fan. He's Alex's T-Bone on BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Ask us anything coming up next. You're on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. We will get to Ryan Suter, Blues' new defenseman, coming up in less than 10 minutes. All right, let's get to these from the 573. Guys, I'm hoping the Cardinals get a starter and a reliever at this year's trade deadline. I could see value down the stretch for longevity and a six-man rotation. What do you guys think about that?
Not a fan of the six-man idea. Granted, Sonny Gray's really got to be wrapped in bubble wrap.
I was going to say, I mean, technically, like Lance Lynn's a bullpen game most of the time, so really five and then a bullpen game.
I think a six-man rotation always sounds good in theory, and then you think about what it means for your bullpen, and I suddenly am less intrigued.
Every time it was brought up with Waino, and I know Waino was just old school traditional, he used to talk about how it just disrupts everybody when you go to a six-man rotation.
I have less worries about that and more about what it does to your bullpen.
You know, it's
like
funny
you're now playing with a seven-man bullpen.
Yeah, Michaelis kind of plays this way too. Michaelis doesn't really like it because he likes to be on his normal rest as well. Yeah, I think they need a bullpen arm and a starter. I don't know. I wouldn't do a six-man.
They've effectively been a six-man rotation with the way that they've utilized rest this year, by the way.
Yeah, because everybody's getting like 5 days off. But I don't want to do a six-man rotation. I think you acquire a starter, and then you have to decide between Palante and Lance Lynn.
From the 314, could Tyler Mahle be an interesting option for the Cardinals if the Rangers were to fall out? Has he pitched much yet?
He's still recovering from Tommy John.
So.
I
like Tyler Mahle, but that would be too risky to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love Mahle's stuff, but because he's coming off Tommy John, and you haven't seen him pitch yet, he's probably not a guy you target until maybe next year's deadline if Texas is still out of it.
From the 314, Alex, do you think that Krug will ultimately force Army to waive him by not accepting a trade?
Yeah, I do. I don't see him accepting. If he would have accepted a trade, I think we would have already seen it by now.
From the 314, would you rather keep Carlson or Ciani when Tommy Edman comes back? We all agree Ciani, right?
Yeah, not even close for me.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a while before that becomes a question, but I would say Ciani would be
I think there's a chance it's a question when Herrera's ready to go, which that should be probably today, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, because
who else would you get rid of if you're keeping Herrera?
Yeah, I think it's Carlson.
I do too. And I think today's probably the day they decide. I would assume Herrera's good to go today. That's my guess.
I wonder if they try to extend it through the All-Star break.
So I bet you they're going to try and push it to where they don't have to make that decision.
Yeah. I personally wouldn't do that, but I wonder if that's what they'll do. From the 314, guys, do you think the St. Louis City SC made the right decision in firing their head coach? I do. I think they needed to, similar to what the Blues did, I think they needed to eliminate a variable, especially with the Sam Adeniran situation. It feels like a lot of this was focused on Sam. They're getting him back in. They're working him back in. It feels like they want that to work. They have declined, according to reports, a lot of different transfer requests for Sam Adeniran. Eventually, you got to find out if it can work here. And if the answer is no with multiple different coaches, then you let him move on. But otherwise, I think that was the main reason why, and I get it.
I didn't know Sam Adeniran was Jordan Kyrou.
There's a lot of similarities.
Very much
there.
is.
It's amazing, though, because people don't hate Sam Adeniran like they hate Jordan Kyrou.
No, in fact, they really love him.
I think there is a difference in terms of the...
If I'm being honest, I think the Adeniran thing, I hope that wasn't the sole reason they fired Cardinal, because I think it's
been losing.
I think it was a factor into it, though. Like when you're losing and the guy that was one of your best players last year is being crushed every single week, that's a problem.
I think Adeniran, Big Sam, I think he's gone by the end of I think this year. I think his contract's up. I think that's a lost cause, but I think they were right to fire Cardinal. They had to make a change because they should be better than what they are.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up at 12:30, we're going to be talking to Eno Sarris. He's one of the best pitching analysts in the country, does a lot of great work over at The Athletic. He's told us in the past, hey, this is the guy that the Cardinals should be targeting, and he knows a lot about this stuff. Who does he think could be available at the deadline this year that profiles as a legitimate, at least middle of the rotation starter? Does he see guys like that the Cardinals could realistically acquire at this year's deadline? He's going to tell us coming up at 12:30. But next, new Blues defenseman Ryan Suter joins the show here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, hoping to get Ryan Suter on the line here in just a moment. He's got to be out with us here in about 10 minutes or so, but we're hoping to get him on, talk a little bit about how he became a St. Louis Blue, what this process was like for him. So we'll talk to Ryan Suter here in just a little bit. Alex, when you look at the way that the Blues' left side of their defense is now set up, you've got Suter, you've got Torrey Krug, you've got 17 other names that are on that side. It feels, and we talked about this a little bit in the open, as if it's setting up for a potential move for them. Is this all roads leading back to Torrey Krug, in your opinion?
It feels like it. I mean, just to kind of break it down piece by piece, Leddy and Parayko are going to be playing together next year. I don't think there's any question about that for how good that they performed together as a pair. And then it comes down to who else you have. The right side is Justin Falk and Matt Kessel. And for me, it really feels like Ryan Suter and Matt Kessel are going to be a pair together because you got a shutdown pair. You got some big bodies that are physical in their own end. Those two play well together. And then it's just the matchup with Justin Falk. And go back to what Doug Armstrong had talked about with the left-handed defenseman. You've got Scott Perunovich. You bring in a tall, lanky defenseman, which we've heard multiple people, Tim Taylor, Doug Armstrong, talk about how size is important on the back end. You got a 6'3" defenseman in Pierre-Olivier Joseph, and then you've got Torrey Krug. So, like, all of those factors into it, it really tells me that the competition for the left side defenseman is going to be down between Scott Perunovich and Pierre-Olivier Joseph, and that leaves Torrey Krug as the odd man out because you can't carry 9 defensemen. I don't think you can carry 8 defensemen this season. And if you go down this path, that means you're sending 1, 2, or at least maybe 3 guys down into the minor leagues.
You have brought up a lot, Alex, the 2011 season and how that was kind of a legitimate transition year for the Blues. And they brought in a couple of older veterans that year to kind of show them the ropes, show the young kids the ropes. And then starting in 2012, they took a step back, but that's when they really went towards the young guys. You had all of the young guys that became the foundation for what the mid-2010s teams were going to be. That feels like what we're watching right now, where I can point to a lot of the guys in the lineup. Like you look at Matthew Joseph in the lineup. I like Matthew Joseph. I think it was a super smart acquisition. I could see how that spot in the lineup is going to be Jimmy Snuggerud next year. Mm-hmm. You look at Alex Texier. I like the move. Smart. A little bit of upside there. Has played in the top 6 in Columbus. Probably fits into your bottom 6. That's going to be the Zach Bolduc spot. The Radek Faksa. I like the move. It's fine. I think that's going to be the Dalibor Dvorsky spot in your lineup moving forward. So you see these guys, they plugged these holes from, and you're upgrading in terms of the stability of the lineup right now. It does feel a bit of a transition is taking place with some of those players.
It does. And so like if you go back 2009, 2010, and then 2010, 2011, they missed the playoffs both of those years. Prior to that, they had that miraculous second half run. They made the playoffs, but then they were in the midst of missing it for 3 years. So like 2011, 2012 happened, and that offseason was when they went out there and they signed Jason Arnott, they signed Jamie Langenbrunner, on top of already having a 26-year-old David Backes, a 22-year-old Patrick Berglund, a 24-year-old TJ Oshie, and David Perron, who was 22 years old. So they went out there, and Doug Armstrong talked a lot about how they wanted veteran presence playing with those younger players. They needed guys who understood how to win at the next level, and that brought in Jason Arnott and Jamie Langenbrunner. That feels an awful lot like what the Blues are doing right now. They're just doing it on the defensive side. Now, do you
like this?
I do. I think I was saying this back in 2021 that I felt like Ryan Suter was the way to go get somebody like that. And then on top of that, you bring in a Matthew Joseph, you bring in a Radek Faksa. I know those are third and fourth line players, but both of those guys have either won a Stanley Cup or been to the Stanley Cup final. That, to me, is what you want around the Dvorskys, the Bolducs, the Neighbors, on top of guys that have already won the Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues.
I think a guy like Alex Steen probably had a little say in that. I would imagine he probably likes having some veteran leadership inside of that room. Yeah. And we're talking to one of those leaders right now. Ryan Suter, new Blues defenseman. He's done a trip around the Central Division. Been in Nashville, been in Minnesota, been in Dallas, now here in St. Louis, the newest St. Louis Blue. First of all, Ryan, congratulations on the deal here in St. Louis. We're excited to watch you with the Blues. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, and I'm excited to be a part of that great organization.
Ryan, you could be honest with us since you've already done a trip through 3 Central Division teams. Did you just know all along it was going to be St. Louis because of the free zoo, because of the toasted ravioli, and because of the arch?
Well, that was a big part of it for sure.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I was born in Wisconsin, so a Midwest guy. And I've been fortunate enough where I haven't had to move out of the Central.
Ryan, tell us a little bit about this offseason for you, what the process was like between late June and today where you become a St. Louis Blue. What was that period like for you in terms of the negotiations that you had?
Yeah, so honestly, it was great to I mean, it sucked to get bought out, to go through that. You don't really expect it. You know, you had a good season. Things were fine. You get to the conference finals, that whole thing. So that it takes a little bit time to get over that. And then kind of just, you know, sitting, talking with your family, I had to decide, do I want to play? And right away, my gut told me yes. Like let's get back on the horse and go figure this out and go pick a good place to play and be a part of something. So once we, as a family, kind of decided that they still wanted me to play and I still wanted to play, then it was kind of just talking to the different teams that are out there. I've been pretty fortunate to have options the last couple times, and at the end of the day, the situation that Doug presented with St. Louis was the best opportunity for me, and like I said, I'm just really looking forward to being a part of the Blues and helping the Blues get back to the playoffs.
What were those conversations with Doug like, Ryan? Because it was reported by Jeremy Rutherford that, you know, Doug had shown interest in the past before you signed with the Dallas Stars. Did you kind of know what Doug was expecting from you, or did those opinions change once you spoke with him the second time around?
Yeah, so I think the first time, you know, he was very aggressive. And he did everything right. He was professional. I mean, you guys know him. He's a class act. So it was different. And now this time it was like he just wanted to make sure that I wanted to do it. And that was because, I mean, you guys know you do something that you're kind of half in. You probably don't get the results that you're expecting. So he wanted to make sure that I'm committed to wanting to play. And then once he heard that, I think then it was pretty easy from there.
New Blues defenseman Ryan Suter joining us here on 101 ESPN for just another couple of minutes. Ryan, I did want to ask you about your role with this team. You know, you're 40 years young now at this point in your career. That there have not been a ton of players that have played at this age. I think it's Mark Giordano, Joe Thornton, Zdeno Chara in recent years. When you look at your role with the St. Louis Blues in 2024, and not only on the ice, but also some of the mentorship that you can give to the younger defensemen that are a part of this organization, how do you view that heading into this season?
Well, that's kind of what excites me. You know, obviously a different stage of my career. When you're young, you just want to go out there and you're just all you care about is playing and this, and you need to get that. And you want to play power play. And now I'm at the stage where I want to be, you know, someone that these young guys can talk to, look up to. You know, a lot of them probably, the draft picks probably weren't even alive or were just born when I started playing. So I always joke last year with all the young D. I'm like, guys, like they're sitting. I would have them over for Thanksgiving, and we're sitting there, and I go, you guys are closer to my kid than you are in me. So it's just kind of like you said, the mentoring side of it. I'm looking to contribute as anywhere I'm needed to, and be a help for the team.
As a quick follow-up to that, Ryan, at what point in your career do you feel like that changed for you? Was that something that really clicked when you got to Dallas, or at what point did that kind of shift in terms of your mindset of kind of focusing as much on the mentorship as the on-ice product, of course?
Yeah, I think the big thing is I've always said it my whole career. I'm like, if I'm better than that guy, I should be given that opportunity. And when I went to Dallas, obviously they got Heiskanen, and then now they have Thomas Harley, a couple of young guys. And it was like, okay, yep, now it's time. They're definitely better than me at that, and I'm good with that. And So I think that's kind of always been my thing is if I can still do it, then I should be able to be given the chance to do it. If not, I totally get it, and I'm going to help that other guy do that role.
Ryan, final question for you, because I know you got to get out and do a couple of other interviews, but, I'm sure the word leadership was brought up a lot when you and Doug discussed your role here in St. Louis. I'm curious how difficult that is when you get to a new place that already has an established core of leaders in place, kind of like what Dallas was, but you're somebody who's been around the league for a long time. Is that easy for you to transition into a room and kind of add your voice to a group of guys that have already been there?
Yeah, I think, every situation's different, obviously. I think for me, it's just go in there and be a good person, do the right thing, and then the rest takes care of itself. I don't think, I'm definitely not a very rah-rah vocal guy, but I try to lead by example. And I've played against a bunch of these guys for a long time, and they have a really good core group of guys here, some veteran guys. They got some really good young players. And I think for me, it's just go in, do the right thing, and it always seems to work itself out.
Ryan, it's great to have you in St. Louis. We appreciate you giving us a couple of minutes today. We look forward to talking with you again soon, man. We'll hopefully get to know you a little bit better, especially as we get out to the rink as training camp approaches. So thanks for hopping on with us today. We look forward to seeing you, man.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. That's Ryan Suter joining us here on 101 ESPN. Appreciate his time. He's got a bunch of interviews, I think, set up today, so had to go a little quicker there than otherwise we typically would. Hey, man, listen. I think his answer when I asked him, when did that change for you? I think that told you kind of where some of the outside noise, how that could take place. I think he answered it. He said, hey, listen, if I'm better than somebody, I want to get that role. And if you're him, that should be your mindset.
Everybody in life feels the same way Ryan Suter does, that if I'm anybody at their job right now listening thinks that if I'm better than the other person that's in that role, I deserve an opportunity to prove that I can continue that.
I can also see how that could rub people the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying now, I'm saying earlier in his career, I can get how when you have that mentality. And I'm saying this as somebody that has that mentality. I'm
you guys
right there
are like
with
the Tone
him.
Brothers.
I could see how that is both exactly why he's played for 20 years in the NHL and has led him to all of the success that he's had in the NHL, and also why there is a bit of a open question around the NHL of what kind of a dude is Ryan Suter? Because when you hear him, we just did 6 minutes with Ryan Suter. I like the guy. I've known him for 6 minutes. I enjoyed talking with him.
I'm with you.
And all of the things that he said sound right to me. But that answer to me is exactly why there is that open question around what's this guy going to be like. And I do think that my guess would be at some point while he was in Dallas, there was a transition for him where he said, I'm not as good as these other guys. And now I've entered a new phase in my career, and I have to accept that. And so I hope that that's what it looks like while he's here in St. Louis.
I think when you look at the role for Ryan Suter, everybody goes back to, and I've seen it all over social media, the Jason Arnott comment about Ryan Suter in Nashville. And now you've got a 21-year-old who's basically saying, hey, I deserve to be on the number one power play unit because I feel like I'm better than your options out there. That can be taken as, you got too much pride by a young kid. You need to know your role. That was what old school hockey was. Minnesota, the buyout makes a lot of sense, but look, you're a guy that's making $10+ million a year on a 13-year contract. You're expected to win a Stanley Cup. So if you come off where you've got a tone problem because, hey, I deserve to be out there because I'm the leader of this team, that can be taken the wrong way if you have no success with it. The transition to Dallas, and that's why I asked that last question about transitioning into a room where there's already vocal players, and I think that's the biggest part about it. Ryan Suter said, I'm not a rah-rah type of guy. I've had so many conversations with Joe Vitale about leadership in the room and kind of being a leader, and Joey said the rah-rah guys, you can read through their BS immediately. If you look at the leaders that the Blues lost over those few years, Petro was never a rah-rah guy. Steen was never a rah-rah guy. Bouwmeester was never that guy. O'Reilly was never that guy. Perron was never that guy. The rah-rah guys are the role players. Those are the Pat Maroons and the Oscar Sundqvists and the Ivan Barbashevs. Right. You need silent leaders that when things are bad, they stand up and say, guys, this is bad news. We need to fix this. The other factor that he said, BK, that I really enjoyed was him. It was just kind of a slight nugget in there where he said, I had all of the guys in Dallas over for Thanksgiving.
Dude, yep. Hey, you want to hear something that Alex Steen would have done? That is something that Alex Steen would have done.
To me, and this was an Alexander Steen-like conversation where it's like, we need more guys in that locker room. Yep. And look, again,
Old
it's
school.
6 minutes. Everybody's expected to be a good PR person, especially if you're an athlete on a new team.
I can tell you now, that was a lot different 6 minutes than the first time I saw Kevin Hayes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I was at that presser.
If you don't believe me, also listen to Grant Francis talk about Kevin Hayes. The first time he talked to him in the locker room, you knew immediately.
Not a bad dude. It was just different.
Yeah, different type of tone problem.
Also, I think some of that is the experience with the media in Nashville and Minnesota and Dallas versus the
Philly and New York.
Philly and in Boston.
And in Boston and in Winnipeg. So, like, he's had it all.
It's a little different in terms of the being jaded because of your experiences with the people that are in our positions that have probably done him wrong at some point.
The way we started this segment before Ryan joined us about the transition and bringing in the Arnotts and the Langenbruners, I was impressed in 6 minutes of a conversation. Again, the proof is in the pudding. If this team struggles for a long period of time and we get news of locker room problems, now we've got an issue. But everything that man just told us in a 6-7 minute interview sounded like a dude that was brought in for one reason and one reason only, to be a leader. And I'm okay with a guy coming in that looks at a Scott Perunovich or a P.O. Joseph and says, I'm better than that guy, so I deserve that ice time.
He should say that.
Yeah. And that should force those players into playing better than Ryan Suter. And if it doesn't, you got a problem with those players.
Exactly. I think that's something that I really like that Doug Armstrong did this offseason, and honestly, Mo did this offseason, this past offseason as well, where he said, hey, listen, if you're better than the dudes that we have brought in to fill a certain role, beat them out. Compete. Go out there and win that job. Dvorsky said it during development camp. He said, it's on me. I got to go out there and win the job.
That's the attitude I want on my roster right now.
Absolutely. You should not be handed something. Like last year, now, he ended up earning it, especially with the second half of the season, but Jordan Walker was basically handed the opportunity in right field. He had a really good, 3 weeks at spring training, then dropped off a cliff in the second half of spring training when the actual starters started performing more. And then he came in and he had some success early on with the hit streak and everything, and then they had to send him down. And then he came back up and he was awesome. I think this past offseason, they wanted a lot of the young guys, hey, beat somebody out for that job, especially on the pitching side of things. So I like what they've done. I like what the approach for both teams in terms of making the young guys earn it. That should be the way that it's going. If you missed any of our conversation with Ryan Suter, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Hey, Alex, yesterday, Ken Rosenthal was on Foul Territory, and he was asked about the Cardinals being aggressive at the trade deadline. I want you to hear his answer in the next segment. And then I want you guys to think about, well, what would an aggressive deadline even look like for this team? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. So yesterday, Ken Rosenthal was on foul territory. And they asked him about the Cardinals. They said, hey, Ken, why wouldn't the Cardinals be aggressive this year at the deadline? The National League is more open than a lot of people expected. The Braves have significant injuries. The Dodgers need basically a new rotation right now. Bobby Miller recently was sent down to AAA because of how bad he's been, and he's dealt with some injuries. Why shouldn't the Cardinals be aggressive? Here's what Ken Rosenthal had to say.
It would go counter to the way they've generally operated in the past. I don't know that we've seen them make many dramatic moves at the deadline. That said, now we all think of the National League as being the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Braves, maybe the Brewers now. The Dodgers are vulnerable. The Braves are not the same. The Phillies are really good. There's no question about it. If you're a team like the Cardinals, why not get a little bit more aggressive in the hope of maybe stealing this thing this year? It's not out of the question that they could do that. Yeah, I'd like to see them be more aggressive. I just don't expect it. I expect them to make kind of complementary moves to what they have. And if they make a bigger one, good for them.
That feels like where we're all at. We'd love to see it. Not going to happen.
Pretty mad.
So, Alex, when you hear that and you think to yourself, like, what could the Cardinals do that would be aggressive? Because it's one thing to say, yeah, go get aggressive. Go do it, Cardinals. What does that look like? Like, in your opinion, what would an aggressive deadline look like for the Cardinals, theoretically speaking?
I mean, I think the most aggressive would be Garrett Crochet, and I don't think that's realistic for anybody. But
that's an all-in move.
Yeah, aggressive.
Somewhere between all-in and what we expect the Cardinals to do is aggressive. What would that look like?
I think that's Eric Fetty. I think that is, although I don't think they're selling now, Luis Severino with the New York Mets. I think that's a Nathan Eovaldi or a Max Scherzer. Those are the types of moves that are the, hey, we are going to be aggressive. Because to me, the bottom of that measurement that you just provided, that's Tyler Anderson. That's going out there and just giving up some minor league dude that nobody's ever heard of for a guy that might be a fifth starter for you.
Kikuchi's probably like this is the Cardinals lane. A number 3 or 4 starter that probably shouldn't start a game 2, but you can dream on it a little bit, and you're like, it's amazing. Sure, Kikuchi.
Roller coaster has just declined of Kikuchi. He's like, it's a number 2, and
I like Kikuchi. I think he's fine. Like, I would not mind him. I think he gets underrated by Cardinals fans because you're like, that's what the Cardinals would do. Sometimes what the Cardinals do actually ends up working, kind of like Quintana and Montgomery, but it's not super aggressive.
I think the most aggressive move would be Eric Fetty. Because you're acquiring a dude that has another year of control that fits more into line of what your plans are for this season and next season, because that's a guy that you hope isn't just a one-year wonder of Miles Michaelis, but you get him and you say, hey, he's going to fight for a number 2 spot next season.
Am I crazy if I say the aggressiveness to me is more about quantity than quality? And what I mean by that is I think it would be about getting a starter that fits into that, like, slightly better than Kikuchi mold, a reliever that can fit into the 7th or 8th inning mix, and a right-handed bat. Yeah. Not getting one or the other, it's getting all 3 of those. If they do that, that feels aggressive to me. You added 3 legitimate major league players, a guy that can be the right-handed bat that they're lacking right now, and two pitchers that can really factor into, like, playoff games. And you don't have to squint to believe it. You're like, okay, that dude is pitching in the 7th or 8th inning, and that dude is starting a game 2 for us. All right, let's see what this looks like. That, to me, is kind of where the aggressiveness comes in, even more so than, like, the specific starter that they go out and acquire. So that is maybe the way that I would kind of phrase it, is it's about the number of additions that they make more so than it is even which addition they make to this rotation.
I'm with you, because that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, for me, aggressive is filling your 3 needs. I think they've got 3 needs and 1 want, and I've expressed my 1 want, which is another starting pitcher. But I think they need a number 2 that they can slot into the rotation. I believe they need a high-leverage bullpen arm, and believe they need a right-handed bat. Aggressive to me, whether you wanted to call it quality, but it's filling those 3 needs, and also filling those 3 needs, and I don't have to, like, squint at it. You know, it's not like what you acquire a starting pitcher, like, for example, Tyler Anderson. I have to go, I guess if I squint hard enough, I can see it because of his ERA.
It's reaching a certain level for each of those 3.
I think when you're looking at that, I think when you're looking at the starting pitching market, I think it is looking for they're going to favor somebody that has control, whether it's an Eric Fetty, or maybe they get even more aggressive and they try and lure away, like a Chris Bassett, for example, got another year on his deal, maybe pay a little bit more in prospects, so trying to eat a little bit more money, and then you go out and you get like a rental type bullpen arm, and you go out and you find like a rental type right-handed bat. I think that's how you feel it. Like if you were able to get like a Mark Canha and then I don't know, name your favorite bullpen arm that'll be on the market. Get one right-handed reliever that
There's
fits
a
in your
million
pin.
of them, and all of them throw 95, and all of them have a wipeout slider.
And then you add in a starter that we just talked about, whether it's Fetty, Bassett, or somebody that fits that number 2 mold. Boom. Now you've got the aggressive move. What I don't like is what they've done in recent years, which I always feel like they enter the playoffs with a hole that they didn't fill. You know, it's not a hole that happened to happen where it is like, oh, Paul Goldschmidt got hurt. Well, you're not going to plan on that,
Sure.
you know? But every time that they've made the playoffs recently, like 2022, didn't really have a deep bullpen. You know, 2021, it was, yeah, you got your rotation and you kind of did it the right way of we just need guys to eat innings for the rest of the year. But your rotation wasn't good enough, and he didn't really have that decent of a pen. So fill the 3 needs that you have. That's an aggressive deadline. And now I don't have to squint at you and say, okay, how do you match up in the playoffs? All of a sudden, you kind of fill those holes, and now I can say, okay, now you're looking across the National League, it feels open, and you should be able to potentially get through the playoffs.
So those are the 3 needs they have. Right-handed hitter, bullpen arm, starter. Let's focus on the starter coming up in our next conversation. We're going to talk to Eno Sarris of The Athletic. He does excellent work with The Athletic, breaking down especially starting pitching, but pitching in general. I want to ask him, who are the pitchers that could be made available at this year's deadline that fit into that number 2 starter in the postseason type of a caliber? Who would he feel comfortable with in that regard for the St. Louis Cardinals? We'll ask Eno Sarris about that when he joins us next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals back in action tonight as they start a 4-game set with the Chicago Cubs. 7:15 will be first pitch. Cal Hendricks will be on the mound for Chicago, and Sonny Gray will get the start for the St. Louis Cardinals. And if you missed it earlier, we had the chance to catch up with the newest St. Louis Blues defenseman, Ryan Suter. And if you missed our conversation with him, you can check it out on our podcast page, 101ESPN.com, or via the free 101 ESPN app. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Eno Sarris. He writes about baseball for The Athletic, and he does so very well. You can always follow him on Twitter at his name, at Eno Sarris. Eno, we appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing really well. So, we come to you for our pitching conversations because you are the expert on those things, and you are able to tell us who the pitchers are that could be made available that are legitimately intriguing. You make us smarter about this stuff, so let's start there. When you look this year to the deadline and you think about maybe not number one starters, but guys that could conceivably start a game 2 for a team in a playoff series, and you wouldn't want to puke into a bucket when they do so. Who are some of those pitchers that fit into that criteria for you?
Could I interest you in a Jack
Never mind. Don't even bring his name up. Please do not. No, absolutely
He's
not.
only a number 2 if he's pitching somewhere other than St. Louis.
That's right. Or if it's 2019.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Just kidding. The prize of the deadline is Garrett Crochet, in Chicago. The question is just, how many innings does he have left? He's not someone who's ever pitched as much as he's pitched this year, and it would suck to have to shut him down after acquiring him. So the nice thing about him, though, is that he's around for a while. I do wonder the way that the Cardinals are built, how much they care about the future and rather just get a rental. There may be at some point where the Cardinals may want to reset a little bit. And because I'm just talking about, some of the older position players, right? And so if they want a rental, the best rentals are, I think one of my favorites is Yusei Kikuchi, left-hander for the Blue Jays, throws really hard. It's a really good 3-pitch mix where he's bringing the changeup in some more this year. And then I think the best options are Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. The Astros may be playing their way out of wanting to sell, but the Rangers recently said that if their win-loss record doesn't change much in the next few weeks, they're going to be selling. Max Scherzer would be an interesting guy. He's not exactly who he was in the past, but he brings more stuff and that sort of veteran moxie. And I would throw him in the second game of a playoff series.
So, I want to stick with the Rangers because we've talked about 2 guys on that team, one Nathan Eovaldi and the other being Max Scherzer. If you were the Cardinals, and Price is, of course, a part of the consideration, with those 2 guys in front of you, which one would you prefer?
I'm taking Max Scherzer. I know that Nathan Eovaldi has a good playoff ERA, but that seems to me a little bit random because you just think about Nate Eovaldi's career and when those games happened. A lot of them happened when he was in his prime, and so I don't know that it's really that relevant how good he's been in the playoffs. Like 5 years ago. How relevant is that right now? You know what I mean? And instead, I'm going to take Max Scherzer's, mix right now. I think over Eovaldi's.
Now, this is obviously a question that is hard to answer on the outside, but how much of a concern would Max Scherzer's health be, given the fact that it's been hard for him? He's been limping into October for 5 years straight now, and he's already had the injury history this year.
No, it's a totally viable thing to worry about. And I just wonder if maybe there's just been less stress on him this year. But you know what? Nathan Eovaldi's been hurt too. He's had 2 Tommy Johns, so, it's one of those things where they look healthy until they break. And with Scherzer, I feel like, he's coming back. He's, what you'll be watching is the next couple starts pretty heavily, looking at his pitch shapes, looking at his velo, looking at his ability to command his breaking balls, and extrapolating from that how healthy you think he is. But, neither one of these guys is the paragons of health.
Eno Sarris is our guest here on 101 ESPN. He makes us smarter about pitching in Major League Baseball, and he does so over at The Athletic, and he joins us regularly here on BK and Ferrario. Explain Tyler Anderson to me like I'm 5, because I look at the peripherals and nothing about it makes sense, and yet 2.8. 2.8 ERA is ultimately what people keep coming back to. So can you help me understand Tyler Anderson a bit? One of the things that sort of the most modern wrinkle, the biggest new trend, and somebody might roll their eyes that this is new. Of course, everything old is new again. But the newest thing, the thing that's happening the most right now, are cutters and sinkers are back. And the reason cutters and sinkers are back is that, the last 2 years, the number of pitchers with 3 fastballs has almost doubled. And so what pitchers are seeing is, if I have 3 fastballs and they're trying to keyhole me into, when he throws his fastball, it looks like this and it's here, then I can throw, it's the sinker, and they're throwing high sinkers and they're throwing high cutters. So if you throw a high cutter, a high sinker, and a high fastball, those are 3 fastballs that move in different directions that might be going to the same place at the same velo. And so hitters have a hard time keying in on your fastball. So Tyler Anderson does throw 3 fastballs. He's part of the modern thing, like when it comes to that. He has a really great changeup. He's among a class of pitchers that I think it's worth buying for the back end of your rotation, in terms of he's a guy with a fair amount of pitches that has good command, and in his good years, the command is good and everything's good, and he does a good job. In the bad years, the command is not there so much, and he's bad. And just last year, he had a 5 ERA for the same team. So that's part of it. And then the last part is just luck. He hasn't really earned it against everybody, and some of his starts have just been against some poor teams, and then like against the Yankees. He faced them when the Yankees were good. He walked 6 guys, struck out 4, and somehow gave up 1 run. So John Gant.
That's who I just said. I said it to our producer. That's John freaking Gant pulling the Houdini.
That start, and John Gant for half of a season got away with it, and the Cardinals said, "No more. We're sending you to Minnesota. J-Hat, please come our way."
No. This is why I do like to gravitate towards stuff, and stuff is a metric that looks at the physical characteristics of pitches, and you can find it on Fangraphs. And one thing that does kind of stand out for me is that St. Louis, the rotation is 26th in stuff. The people that it's around, the people surrounding it are the Marlins. The Guardians, who actually have the worst starting rotation in baseball by ERA, by a lot of other metrics, the White Sox and the Rockies. So, they're not in a good spot there, and I think it would behoove them to kind of get somebody that didn't profile like some of their other starters and had more stuff. So that's why Kikuchi's probably my favorite guy at the deadline for a lot of different teams.
Our producer Tanner is overly excited right now.
His arm is in the air.
I love Kikuchi.
He's just fist pumping for you say Kikuchi. But you mentioned the White Sox, and the name that I think a lot of Cardinals fans keep bringing up is Eric Fetty, not Garrett Crochet. And Eric Fetty is one of these guys that you're looking at, you're like, how is he doing this? Because 2 years ago, he was terrible for the Washington Nationals. Would you invest stock into Eric Fetty being that guy that could fix for the Cardinals?
I like him. I put him, when I tiered the available pitchers, I put him at the top of the mid-rotation guys. So I didn't put him as a front-of-the-rotation guy. And that's because he still throws a poor four seam in terms of shape. And he's kind of gone away from that. And he tried to replace it with a cutter and a sinker, but the cutter goes 90 miles an hour. So against lefties, they're timing to 90 miles an hour, because they're not going to seat that many sinkers. And what he added was a sweeper and a good split finger, and that's what the difference has been. The sweeper and the split finger have been really big deals for him, as well as the cutter. I think he's a good pitcher. Maybe a 3. So if you feel like you have an ace and you just want, and I think Sonny's the ace, then you just want a guy that can be. I think he can pitch. I'm just a little bit more nervous about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you look at the fastball. Look at the fastball velo, and that's a big part of why I'm nervous about it.
So, and as a follow-up with that, Cardinals fans, we look at it and you say Sonny Gray, game 1 starter, and then of course you're looking for that game 2. But when you look at Miles Mikolas and Kyle Gibson, of course you're having conversations about both of these guys. As the Cardinals approach the trade deadline, are they trying to upgrade over both of those guys, or are you just trying to upgrade over maybe one of them?
I think you can upgrade over one of them and use your depth to your advantage in whatever game 3. You can call it a bullpen game or whatever, but I think you can probably get a lot out of Gibson, Mikolas, and Lynn if you're careful about it. You could probably get 2 games out of them and Palante. You know what I mean? You're playing the matchups. It's not obvious what the matchups are because they're all right-handers, but they each have different strengths, right? So you'll have a batter who's not so great against sliders, and maybe Miles Mikolas comes in and just fills up the zone with sliders. You know what I mean? Or so there's different ways that you could manage those guys. Plus, if you take Lynn, Mikolas, Gibson, and Palante and say you're only throwing 3 innings, maybe you get an extra tick or 2 out of the fastball.
Final question that I've got for you, and Eno Sarris is our guest here on 101 ESPN. If I told you the Cardinals traded for Yusei Kikuchi, because that feels like such a Cardinals-y move, like an expiring deal, a really solid mid-rotation starter, lefty, they'd like to get that into the rotation. If they trade for him and their rotation in the postseason is Sonny Gray, Yusei Kikuchi, Kyle Gibson, and then Miles Mikolas with Lance Lynn kind of filling in there in the back end, how would you feel about that as a playoff rotation for somebody that sees themselves as a contender?
I would say that the Texas Rangers and Arizona Diamondbacks last year did not necessarily have much better than that.
Do you think the Cardinals could get through this version of the National League with that, given what they have against them with the Dodgers and the Phillies and those ferocious lineups?
I would say that the hitters need to hit.
That's ultimately what it all comes back to.
Team.
Yep, it all comes back to, hey, are Goldie and Arenado going to be Goldie and Arenado at some point this year, or is it just gone?
I think that's going to matter. And I don't think you can look to the trade deadline and be like, we're going to, up our rotation to the point where we can dominate the Dodgers and Phillies. I think it takes more work than that, honestly.
Hey, it's always great to be able to catch up with you, man. Enjoy the All-Star break next week. We look forward to catching up with you again as we get closer and closer to this year's trade deadline. All the best to you. We'll talk with you again soon, my friend.
All right. Thanks for having me.
You got it. That's Eno Sarris. Makes us smarter about baseball over at The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at his name, at Eno Sarris. You say?
T-Bone, say it with me. Yusei Kikuchi! Go get a bullpen arm with it, too.
If people are wondering, what are recent examples of Eno's success in predicting future for pitchers? He said keep an eye on Shota Imanaga.
Yeah.
He thought he would be a senior guy.
Yamamoto.
Potentially better than Yamamoto, and so far he's lived up to that.
Yeah. I told us about... He said Sonny Gray would be a perfect addition for the Cardinals. Yep. He said if you want a guy that's going to come in at a reasonable rate and can be a legitimate number 1 for you, Sonny Gray is that kind of a pitcher at this point in his career.
I kind of like the idea of Max Scherzer after talking with him. I know the injury stuff scares you, but
it scares the hell out of me, dude.
Here's why
that would be the Cardinals announcing themselves as we're in.
Yeah.
We really want to go for it.
You said aggressive.
It would definitely be aggressive.
Here's why I'm more interested in Scherzer than Kikuchi, because I think a lot of teams are going to be fighting over Kikuchi. Scherzer's going to get to dictate where he goes.
Absolutely.
And that might scream more Cardinals like the Goldschmidt and Arenado of like, hey, if he wants to play in St. Louis, you give up the pieces, and the Rangers can't ask for a whole lot. Whereas Kikuchi, you're going to be fighting with Dodgers, Brewers, you're going to be fighting with 5 or 6 teams that are looking for that starting pitcher.
As I look at Kikuchi's numbers, like he feels like he is viewed very similarly across Major League Baseball to what Jordan Montgomery was viewed when the Cardinals traded for Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, 3-4, the current team that he's on doesn't necessarily view him as a part of their future, similar to what the Yankees didn't view Jordan Montgomery as a part of their playoff rotation. Going to move on from him at the end of the season. He's older than Jordan Montgomery was at the time, but you say Kikuchi has similar in terms of the strikeouts per 9 innings. He's always over 9 per 9 innings. Really good strikeout rates, great command. He's got pretty unfortunate batted ball luck in Toronto. I wonder if some of that is because of the defense that's behind him. I wonder if it would play better here in St. Louis. Man, I get the dream. I get the dream on Max Scherzer. I don't blame anybody for dreaming on that dude. It's Max bleeping Scherzer. Like, he's one of the best pitchers in the history of the game and one of the 5 best pitchers of the last 25 years, probably. That's conservatively speaking. It would scare the hell out of me. Every time he takes the mound, I would be waiting for him to get hurt.
Yep.
But that's a number 2. Like, that's a number 1.
That's a number 1.
That guy's starting game 1. If he's truly healthy in the postseason, he's starting game 1 for you, and Sonny Gray starting game 2, and now you have what appears to be a legitimate World Series contending rotation. I don't know if the rest of the team would be in that
And again,
vein,
you said aggressive. I think that's about as aggressive as you can get. Plus, I also don't think you're paying the same price that you'd be paying for some of these other pitchers because he dictates where he's going.
Does he have another year under contract? I haven't looked at his deal because honestly, I just view it as very unlikely that the Rangers would deal him or that he ends up going anywhere. But that would be the other question is like actual cash. What are the Cardinals going to be spending there? Because I know the Mets are paying
part of it.
A majority of his deal right now.
He does not. If I'm looking at this correct, he does not have another year after this season.
Talk about a perfect break for the Cardinals.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I would wonder what the cost would be.
I'm more out on Fetty now after talking with Eno. Like, I don't mind it, but I think you're going to
feel the same about Fetty today that I did before.
I feel like you're paying too steep of a price for Eric Fetty because he's probably going to be at the top of that list. So really, after speaking with Eno, it feels like it's Kikuchi or Scherzer. And I mean, like, I do not like the idea of Tyler Anderson. The fact that he said pure luck scares the hell out of me.
That's what it is. He walks a bunch of people. He doesn't strike anybody out, and he's getting good batted ball luck right now. When that depletes, which it will, he's going to that ERA is going to go up. It's going to. Right now, it's 2.8. By the end of the year, I would bet on it being around 4. And if you're okay with that, cool. I wouldn't want that to be my number 2 starter going into a playoff series. I would much rather bet on Eric Fetty. I would rather bet on Jack Flaherty than Tyler Anderson, personally. I know the Cardinals' history with Jack Flaherty. I would rather bet on that than bet on the profile that is Tyler Anderson.
I'm with you. I would go so many different. I think I would rather stand pat than go after Tyler Anderson. I'm not going to pay a price for Tyler Anderson when I'm probably going to get the same contributions.
Super cheap.
Which I don't expect it to be because you got like 12, 13, 14 teams fighting for pitching, and that's going to be one of the guys that teams are going to have to pay for.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. I want to tell you guys about an experience that I'm about to have with Flight coming up next during the Junk Tour here on 101 ESPN. All right, boys, so I've got a big trip coming up in December. I'm going to Mexico City with a bunch of buddies and my brother-in-law in December. 5 guys going down to Mexico City together, eating some fantastic food, just hanging out in the city.
I actually think I've seen a horror film that starts that way.
Yeah, it'll be.
Typically, people don't come back from those trips.
There's no way this ends poorly.
Oh, boy.
Heard that before.
With your BKO ability, I would not have even said that out loud.
So as you know, I have some pretty significant power with my BKO ability. I shut down an entire airlines once when I was flying back home from Denver, and Southwest Airlines said, our entire system is down for the next 6 hours. So we were sitting at the Denver airport for
He's been BKO.
amount of time.
When did you get to St. Louis? Like, move?
The first time that I moved here was 2016, and then in 2019 moved back to Kansas City.
So he's been BKOing Cardinals and Blues fans since 2019.
Yeah, I left in 2019.
When the Blues were the worst team in the NHL.
Yeah,
and came back after they won the cup.
Correct.
And then the Cardinals made it to the... Did you come back when the Cardinals started the series against the Washington Nationals in 2019?
No, I was gone that year. That's why they made the NLCS. So
I just thought you came back when they got no hit by Anibal Sanchez.
No, but I've been back since the pandemic. I got here a month before the pandemic started.
He BKO'd the world. I mean,
exactly.
You don't get any bigger than that.
So anyways, I'm going to Mexico City in December. Super excited about it. It's like a bucket list city for me. We're going to a bunch of different unbelievable restaurants, bars, whatever. You guys don't care about that. What could be entertaining for our listeners is how I'm going to get there. So flights are unbelievably expensive to Mexico City from St. Louis. So we decided to find a new way, right? One of my buddies that's going on the trip with me.
Never a good idea, man.
I sent him a flight that was basically direct. It had one stop, so we flew into Houston and then down to Mexico City. We leave here like 6 a.m., get there at like 2 p.m., right? It's like $400 to get down there with that flight. And that was before any baggage or fees or anything like that. He says, yeah, that looks good. I will tell you, I had another idea. I said, okay, cool, what do you got? Because I'm ready to save some money.
Oh, boy.
It's like, well, I was looking into this, and there's a flight that leaves every day from San Antonio. It's $50. It's one time a day, and it's through a company called Viva Aerobus. I said, I've never heard of it. Sounds great. What do we got to do?
This sounds like the kind of plane you'd fly out of the Olney airport.
He said, well, we have to fly to Atlanta and then to San Antonio, and then this would take us to Mexico City. But we'd save like $150 or $200. I said, sold. Let's do it. How do I sign up? So I officially booked it yesterday without doing any research whatsoever.
To save $150 or $200.
Yikes.
Without looking at any of the reviews.
Do you know that when your luggage doesn't get there, you are going to spend probably $150 to $200 to get all of that stuff back?
It'll be great.
Or if you actually, like, your body doesn't end up there and your body ends up in some, like,
I'm not worried about that. The flight will get there.
Leaky basement with the, like the flashing dim lights that, when a chainsaw comes out of the room behind you.
So the problem is most of the reviews say something to the effect of definitely anticipate a delay, possibly for multiple hours, and your luggage might not arrive with you. I think that it's basically because people have connections on a lot of these flights, so they're going from San Antonio to Mexico City and then going further down south into Mexico to like one of the smaller cities.
What are you doing, man?
I think we're going to be good.
What are you doing, man?
What are the odds that I'm going to get I will get there on time with my luggage in place?
None.
What are the odds?
I would say none.
Good.
If they're giving you a warning like, hey, your luggage won't be here, I would plan on it not being there.
I think we're going to be fine.
I think there's a greater than 50% chance you're buying a lot of luggage.
You're spending $250 on clothes
in Mexico City.
Yeah.
All the money you
cost of living is great down there. Now I have seen some of the prices of like clothes and stuff, and especially
the city is sinking.
We're staying in Roma Norte. It's pretty expensive in that area apparently, but I'm sure it'll be good, right?
No.
Do you have to end that sentence with right, meaning no, it's not going to be?
When's this trip so me and Ferrario can plan on 2 weeks rather than one that you'll be out?
2 weeks, probably plan on him. That's when it's the.
Well, this is for us to get there.
That's when it's the Ferrario and Tito
on the way
show.
back, we're gonna fly a normal flight.
You ain't coming back.
Yeah.
There is no coming back. That's why they sell it that way.
There's gonna be so many issues.
You were gonna end up
I'm
in
gonna prepare for you to be out an extra week compared to whatever you're out
What was that movie called? Hostel, where they ended up in like some place in Amsterdam where they're getting like their fingers cut off. Yeah, Hostel. You're going to be in the movie Hostel. Just 4 dudes going down for a bros trip. Yeah, it's wild. BK's going to come back with like a baby head attached to him.
Oh.
Yeah.
If that happens, just don't come back.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, what's the draw to Mexico City? Oh, dude, some of the best food in the world.
It's supposed to be a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Even though it's sinking.
I am so excited. Most of my time when I get home is watching YouTube videos about Mexico City now. It's fantastic.
This is why Luca thinks you're boring.
Somebody said Viva Aerobus has a 2.5 out of 10 rating on TripAdvisor. It does. That's true.
To save $250.
BK is so going to get into that plane. It's going to have
dude,
like
what is $250?
It pays for one of our dinners while we're down there. I can go to Puyol, and basically the money that I'm saving from this flight is going to pay for my dinner.
You know who we should have on when he's on this trip, T-Bone? We should have Polo on. Just to give us an idea of what this man is going through.
He is getting in a plane. You know, like the planes you go to like jump out in the parachute, like in Las Vegas. They've got like duct tape on the inside. And you're like the whole ride until you jump out. You're thinking, man, I hope this thing stays together in the air. That's what his plane's going to look like. But he's not jumping out of it. He's like sitting in a seat that's got duct tape.
There are a few things that like I just pay extra money for just because. Safety is probably the number one thing I'm going to pay extra for, and that would be the flight that I'm
going. Keeping track of your luggage, I think, would be 2.
If I'm going on a flight that's 2.5 out of 10 stars, I'm worried for my life. You better pop like 10 melatonin when you get on that flight so you sleep through it and hope you wake up in Mexico.
Yeah, I don't want to, dude. I don't want to sleep through that flight.
That'd be great.
I want to be awake.
Your body actually, when you crash, your body's probably more limp, so you might survive.
I genuinely have zero concern about the flight itself. I'm not worried about us getting from San Antonio to Mexico City. I'm very worried about us taking off on time. I'm very worried about them overbooking the flight and me potentially not having a spot on the flight that I booked. And I'm very worried about my luggage getting there on time. Those are the 3 things I'm concerned about. The flight itself, man, we'll get there. We'll get point A to point B. We'll be good.
2.5 stars, I wouldn't be.
I would not be confident on that one either.
Somebody said on the text line, this trip sounded so smart and cultured, and then you kept talking. Facepalm emoji.
True.
Yep. I mean, we're going to a couple of museums while we're down there. We're going to go to a couple of... It's going to be a good trip. I'll be gone for a week. You guys will be taken care of by Alex and T-Bone.
Yeah, probably 4 weeks, and then it'll be a Ferrario and T-Bone show.
Coming up in 15 minutes or so, we got to talk a little bit about what the Pirates did yesterday. They pulled Paul Skenes after 7 innings when he had a no-hitter going and fewer than 100 pitches thrown.
That's some Marmol stuff right there.
They were up 1-0. They won the game. Did they make a mistake? We'll get into that coming up in 15 minutes. Has Oli Marmol earned his contract extension, though? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN. All right, so the St. Louis Cardinals have the smallest margin of victory in Major League Baseball so far this year. I saw earlier today, Derek Gould wrote about this, Alex. Their average margin of victory is less than 2.5 runs. It's the slimmest margin in all of baseball. For perspective, 22 teams in Major League Baseball, their average margin of victory is between 3 and 4. There's at 2.4. All 4 of the other division rivals in the National League Central, they fit into that 3 to 4 range. The Cubs are at 3.2. That's the lowest other than the Cardinals in this division. And a reminder, the Cardinals are at 2.4. The Cardinals, if you look at the leverage index, again, this is coming from Derek Gould's piece over in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which basically means like, hey, how often do you have high leverage situations for your relievers? It's just them and the Rays in terms of the highest leverage situations for their relievers on average so far this season. So they play a ton of close games. When you play a lot of close games, it puts a lot of pressure on your manager to make the right decisions. And Alex, when you look at what their record is so far on the season, and especially after the way they started at 15-24, I think it's fair to say that Oli Marmol has done a pretty damn good job. 33-20 since that 15-24 start. Hard to argue against it. Just bare bones basic. The results have to matter. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. The YouTube chat, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. When you think about the job that Oli Marmol has done this year, the injuries, Arenado and Goldie dropping off, not having some of their high-leverage relievers the way that they expected to with Keenan Middleton and Riley O'Brien, not having Jordan Walker for the vast majority of the season, 6 weeks without their best hitter in Wilson Contreras, piecing things together production-wise with the offense, kind of waiting off the storm when they offensively were terrible for the first 6 weeks of the year, keeping this thing together when they get off to a 15-24 start again, getting them right back into the playoff mix, having them second in the NL Central or in the NL Central and in the wild card race right now. I think he has more than earned his contract extension. I think he's done a really good job this year of managing the roster, managing the situation as has been presented to him. Do you feel that way, Alex?
Yeah, I do. I think the way he has gone about it this season should take away all of the, you shouldn't have give Oli Marmol that extension. I think a lot of people said that because of how bad last season was, but you can't deny the fact that this team is finding ways to win. And the way that they're winning, the fact that you have to win these games by 1 run from start to finish, I think they've scored the 7th fewest runs in Major League Baseball all season. So you're not scoring a lot of runs, and you just said one of the smallest margins of victories in Major League Baseball. I mean, that's the manager going to the right guys in the bullpen, knowing when to pull guys out of the start, knowing when to get to their bullpen, and managing through all of the ups and downs of the roster players, the personnel side. I thought last year was a disaster for Oli. This year's an improvement, although I don't like certain things that Oli does.
Oh, yeah. I get frustrated by certain things. We talked about it yesterday with the doubleheader. I didn't like the way that they approached it with Gordon Graceffo. I didn't like, in general, going to him there. I thought, hey, just go to Sonny Gray in that spot, allow him to have his normal rest, allow him to continue preparing for the team that he had previously been preparing for. Just keep it as is.
And I don't like what T-Bone said yesterday, too, where it's he goes by what the script is, and you're never willing to go off of script. It's just, nope, this guy's doing this amount of no matter what happens in the game, and then we're going to this guy no matter who's at the plate. I don't like his ability to improv in the middle of a game.
So it's okay to still question some of the decisions. That's managing. That's baseball, right? There's even the best managers in the game, they'll make decisions that 80% of their fan base disagrees with. That's fair. That's baseball. That's what this is all about. Overall, though, if we look at the body of work for the entirety of the season, despite some of the individual decisions that I disagree with, or the way they've handled Sonny Gray in general this year, I don't like it. I don't think it's fun to watch. It's frustrating in the moment where you're like, hey, Sonny Gray is shoving. He's thrown 87 pitches. He's through 6 innings. Can we get him that 7th inning? Because we've talked so much about how the bullpen is overworked. Can we get him that 7th inning to take a little bit of that strain off of the bullpen? And the answer is, generally speaking, no so far this year. That being said, like, it's hard to disagree with the overall results with Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray's been great for them so far this year. I know there's been some blow-ups lately, but he has a 3.3 ERA. He's at least in the conversation, top 10 for the Cy Young in the National League. They've kept him healthy since his injury early on in spring training. It's like hard to disagree with it too much. I think overall, body of work, good job. I would say like a B+ so far this season for Oli Marmol. You could make an argument for an A- given what the start was.
Yeah, I think he's earned the contract extension, though I do think some of what I'm thinking does kind of make me a little hesitant to say that. But I think he's earned it. I think the main reason he earned it isn't any tactical decision that he's done this year. It's the fact that this team didn't crumble when they were 9 games below 500 at 15-24, and people were calling for his job and were calling for the hitting coach's job. I think that right there tells me that the fact that he could keep this thing afloat, forget all the decisions he's made on the baseball field. That's the most impressive part, because you know who wasn't able to do that? Bob Melvin in San Diego last year. He could never get that team to right the ship and get to the playoffs, and that was a better roster than what Oli had last year, and Bob Melvin couldn't make it work in San Diego. Now, I do think there is still some jury out on how we can actually view Oli Marmol across Major League Baseball as a manager. You know, we'll see how he continues to manage this bullpen. I think it's one of the toughest tasks he has coming into the second half, because though this bullpen is really good, it's also kind of a fragile bullpen. And what I mean by that is Kittredge is coming off of a major injury. Jojo Romero hasn't thrown this many innings in the past. You've got Ryan Fernandez, who is a first-time big leaguer. At some point, is he going to hit a wall? And that's where I think he's going to have to start pushing these starters as we get into the second half, including Sonny Gray, deeper into ball games. When you can save an inning on the bullpen, I think you have to do it in the second half. And the other thing, and I think this is the most important part that will really determine how I look at Oli Marmol in his first 3 years of work in St. Louis, really the first 2 of 3, because I know what he was going to do in Game 3 if they got to it in 2022 with Philadelphia. He was going to trust a veteran in Adam Wainwright, who was coming off of a bad stretch. And as you saw in 23, that was a legitimate thing. Why I mention that is how does he handle Nolan Arenado, and how does he handle Paul Goldschmidt here in the second half?
It's going to be fascinating, dude.
Because
this second half of the season is as interested as I've been in the Cardinals in a long time. Not just because I think they're great or anything like that, but they've got real decisions to make.
Tough decisions,
deadline decisions to make. They've got Jordan Walker, like, for the future and for the right now decisions to make. Roster manipulation. What is the plan with Tommy Edman when he gets back? What do you do in center field? What's the plan with Arenado and with Goldie in your batting order? How do you handle this bullpen that T-Bone just mentioned? You've got real questions about the back end. What do you do in your rotation when, hey, Andre Palante has been better straight up than Lance Lynn recently? He's been a better starter 1-for-1. And if that continues as you get closer to the deadline and you trade for a starter, are you going to keep Lance Lynn in the rotation because he's a veteran? Do you push Andre Palante back down to the minors? And if you end up missing out on the playoffs by a game or two, could that have been a part of the reason why? Because it could have been one of those games that ultimately cost you the, like, it's just, there's a lot of really intriguing decisions as to what could take place in the second half. And most of that is on Oli Marmol's plate.
And the reason I mentioned the Arenado and Goldie one is because when you look at their numbers as a whole, now look, I know they're looking at some of the advanced numbers for Goldschmidt, but I think you're beyond the point of looking at the advanced numbers saying at some point it's going to turn around. The reason I mention that is if he goes with his stick with the veterans, that's the kind of decision that can actively hurt him. You know, that's the decision that can actively hurt the Cardinals offense and make it worse just because they're getting potentially more at-bats than someone that's more deserving, like a potential Lars Nootbaar or Brendan Donovan, or I don't know if they do it for Alec Burleson, but you can get what I'm saying, as that's the kind of decision that can actively hurt the team. And it's not a easy decision if you're a young manager like Oli Marmol to go out there and say, we have to not have Arenado in our top 5. We cannot have Paul Goldschmidt in our top 5. And that was the decision he faced in 2022. And look, we never got to see it, but all the signs seem to be pointing to that he was going to go with a struggling veteran and Adam Wainwright. Hell, he had Yadier Molina hit for himself late in a playoff game when they were losing, when it was not Yadier Molina of old. So those are the kind of things that yes, he has earned this contract extension. But for Oli Marmol to become arguably like some of the best managers in baseball, like people like talk about Craig Counsell and talk about Alex Coraz, these are the decisions that will separate him from that muddy middle pack.
Yeah, and I'm not as worried about the Waino and Molina decisions. Now, Arenado and Goldschmidt are the part, but I don't see him doing that with Lance Lynn because that's not the same status as what Waino and Molina was in St. Louis. Like,
I think most managers would make the decision to keep Lance Lynn in the rotation
for the rest of the regular season, depending on what you acquire via trade. Probably, but I don't see Oli doing that if you get an upgrade over Lance Lynn.
See, I think they'll just say Lance Lynn is our 5 for the rest of this year. And I wouldn't blame them for doing it, but it's just, it could be something that ultimately comes back to bite them. Because you don't really have a slot in your bullpen to put Lance Lynn, so it would have to be a DFA. Like, you'd have to say we're eating this money on Lance Lynn and calling it a day. And I don't think they're ready or should do that. It's the asset game.
Not yet, but I would be critical of them in the second half if they decide that. Because
be an interesting
once
decision.
you get to the first half is, kind of trying to figure out what you have. Once we're past the All-Star break and you're past the trade deadline, if you bring in somebody else and it becomes decision time between Pallante and Lynn, hey, it's win now mode.
Well, that's how you fall out of the playoff race.
Yeah, there no longer should be the whole asset management game. If Lance Lynn's not pitching better than Andre Pallante, Lance Lynn's not.
It's the same reason why Brandon Crawford should be DFA'd when you get to those roster decisions. Not because you need the leadership, it's because you need the roster spot for somebody who helps you win out. That's how you fall out of the playoff race, as we've talked about who's going to be in that wild card spot at the end of the season. If you keep sticking with your guys because they're our guys, you'll fall out of it. But Lance Lynn's not in the same status as what Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina was.
Course.
So that's why I kind of feel like it would not surprise me if they look at it and say he's not an asset to us anymore, especially for how Andre Pallante is while he pipped him.
And for people that are curious, like, what are you talking about, BK? Has he really been that much better? Since the 4th of July, Andre Pallante in 6 starts has a 3.1 ERA. Opposing hitters have an OPS of 665 against him. Lance Lynn, in that same amount of time, 7.1 ERA in 6 starts. Opposing hitters with an OPS of 825 against him.
Same starts, 6, right?
6 starts
Who's
for each
thrown
of them.
more innings?
I believe it's Andre Pallante. I think Pallante's at 32. Lance Lynn is at 29.
Basically, Lynn's not even doing his job.
Quality, everything about it. Andre Pallante has flat out been better. It hasn't, or excuse me, 4th of June. I said 4th of July. 4th of June. It's been a little more than a month. So if that continues by August 1st, that's where things get really interesting. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, the Pirates made an interesting decision yesterday. I didn't necessarily love it, but it did win them a game. Is it worth it? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's got to go in the next segment here on BK and Ferrario. But right now, Alex, yesterday, the Pittsburgh Pirates were taking on the Milwaukee Brewers, and Paul Skenes did it again. He did it again. This guy's unbelievable, man. He's going to be starting for the National League in this year's All-Star game. Yesterday, he goes 7 innings, did not allow a single hit, 1 walk allowed, 11 strikeouts, did so over the course of 99 pitches. 11 strikeouts, no hits allowed in 7 innings. And then they took him out of the game. A no-hitter through 7 against a division rival as a rookie, one of the best pitchers in the major leagues this year. He's arguably in the conversation right now for the Cy Young, despite the lack of workload. 1.9 ERA so far this year.
And Pittsburgh Pirates fans probably weren't even mad because they're like, hey, at least we've got Paul Skenes, right? Look how good he is.
Do you think they made the right call there?
No. Anytime a guy's got a no-hitter, especially when you're talking about a rookie who is like putting together a historical first season, no, you don't pull him.
Rookies to throw a no-hitter in the past 20 years. Reed Detmers did it for the Angels back in 2022. That's the most recent one. Tyler Gilbert for the Diamondbacks in 2021. Chris Heston for the Giants in 2015. Buchholz for the Red Sox in 2007. Anibal Sanchez for the Marlins in 2006. So 5 times as a rookie thrown a true no-hitter in the past 20 years. Yeah. They had a chance to have the 6th yesterday, and they said no to it.
You just can't. And I understand why they did, because he's a young guy who's never pitched this much, and he's already at 99 pitches. I think the previous start he threw like 107, so you knew what his pitch limit was going to be. But in respect to your fans, and I understand it's the long play here, but in respect to your fans, and honestly in respect to the player, if you're doing something that has only happened 5 other times in Major League Baseball history, like, I'm going to that, dude.
The other thing is, like, it's the perfect timing for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're going into the All-Star break. He's going to throw, 25 pitches in the All-Star game? He's going to start, but he's going to throw, like, an inning, maybe 2, maybe. And so he's got a ton of rest coming up. It's built in for him. And then if you're the Pirates and you want to build in even more, you just flip the rotation. You just skip his next start on the front end, and you have him as like the 5th starter in line coming out of the break. So you could get him like 10 days of rest, essentially, coming off of this start. And so, yeah, even if it is 120 pitches, which is a ton, dude, he was doing that a year ago. Yeah. He was doing this at LSU. This isn't some guy that's like some frail pitcher that is like if Tink Hens came up to the Cardinals and was amazing right away, and he had a similar situation, the Cardinals absolutely should not push him because they haven't pushed him at any point down in the minors. Skenes was pushed while he was at LSU. He was going deep into games, and you're not telling him to throw 150. You throw him back out there for the 8th inning. If you give up a hit, you go to your bullpen. You go to the same dudes that you ended up going with, Holderman and then Chapman closing that thing down. Like, you still have that opportunity. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I'm kind of with T-Bone on this now. I'm not as sternly in this camp, but
just not old school enough.
T-Bone is firmly in there's no evidence to suggest that these pitch limits and innings limits are reducing injuries in Major League Baseball. There's been no real research that confirms that is working for teams. And I'm with you. In general, though, like, I can see how it's not a leap to say, hey, doing something a little bit less, not a lot less, but a little bit less, I could see how that would be a smart way to approach it, especially with a young arm like Skenes. This felt different. Felt different because of the All-Star break coming up, the timing of it, that plays into my decision here, and because it's potentially history. Like that, like for baseball in general, and I know you're not doing, if you're Derek Shelton, I'm not managing for baseball storylines, but imagine the storyline of Paul Skenes going into the All-Star break when he is pitching in the All-Star game as the starter for the National League, throws a no-hitter. Talk about a storyline, dude. It would have been amazing.
And I think the part that frustrates me most about it, because I agree, I think it's the wrong decision. It's clear to tell when you watched him pitch in that game, that dude could have thrown 120 pitches. You know, that was clearly decided by Derek Shelton before that inning started. He's coming out after 7, or until he gives up a hit. When he gives up a hit, or he comes out after the 7th inning, we're going to pull him. That's what's most frustrating part about it. Guys, Skenes is a freaking tank out there. That guy could have easily gone out there and thrown 120 pitches, and it wouldn't bother him because he did it in college. And that's where I understand what you're saying of doing it a little bit less. That's not a bad thing. These guys are machines, man, and they can go out there and they can throw. And if you look at where most injuries happen for starting pitchers, it's mostly in spring training while they're trying to ramp up.
Sure.
When they're ramped up, a lot of the major
in the first
arms
month
injuries,
of the season as well.
a lot of the major arm injuries don't happen. There are some that do, but with Paul Skenes, man, let him go out there, let him chase history. Because a bunch of those names that you just said, and I don't think Skenes is going to fit in this category. A lot of those rookies that you said that threw no hitters, a lot of them aren't very good pitchers. Reed Detmeyer's number like 4 or 5 starter. Clay Buchholz never really amounted to anything. Had a couple of good seasons.
Anibal Sanchez's best times were against the Cardinals.
Yeah, true.
Skenes will get a lot of those chances. But like a lot of those names you said, you're getting a chance to be in the history books forever across Major League Baseball. That should mean something. And that's why I think, even though, yes, I understand there is hey, this is a rookie, this guy is built different, man. That guy is an ace already.
It's unbelievable.
There's not guys like him coming out of this year's draft, and we haven't seen a guy like Paul Skenes since Steven Strasburg came out of his draft.
The Pirates, I don't know that they're willing to do it. I mean, knowing their ownership, they probably won't.
Oh, no, he's already signing with the New York Yankees when he's a free
I'm not
agent.
talking about that. They shouldn't sign him to an extension. They shouldn't. Too much risk right now at this point in his career.
And he will.
5 years in, like maybe then you talk about it, but by then he's going to say, I'm not doing it. So whatever. It'll be a Garrett Cole situation. They need to go all in over the next 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Like whatever your maximum capacity is as a payroll, as a team, this offseason, you should be looking at what can we do? What are the biggest moves that we can make to make this team as good as possible, as quick as possible? You got to go out and do it. If that means going out and getting like 3 really good hitters, do it, dude. Because you've got 2 guys at the front end of that rotation and really 3 that are studs. You've got a bullpen that can do it right now. And you don't know how long that's going to last.
Yeah.
It could be gone. Like
this is the season to do it.
Think about the Marlins, dude. 2 years ago, we were talking about them trading from their surplus of rotation. 2 segments ago, we just talked with, or 3 segments ago, I guess now, we talked with Eno Sarris, who told us the worst rotation in baseball when it comes to stuff is the Marlins this year. That happened overnight because of injuries. It can happen to the Pirates. For baseball, for that city, for that organization, they've got to go all in.
For the same reason that the Cardinals need to be aggressive this trade deadline, I would say the Pirates need to be, because the National League is wide open. And when you got those 3 big-headed monsters going out there for you in a rotation, you go get offense.
If the Pirates find a way to get to October, they are the team that everybody should be afraid of. I know. And if they find a way to get to October, everybody will fear them. Eno said to us, I don't know if you can build a lineup to shut down, or a rotation if you're the Cardinals, to shut down the Dodgers, the Phillies.
You got to hit.
I agree with that. You got to hit. Pirates, dude, they get to October, they can shut down any lineup.
It's going to be crazy. It'll be a Strasburg situation with Jared Jones.
Oh, I would lose my ish. And we saw that cost the Washington Nationals in the playoffs.
I'm going to be really curious to see how they handle him. The same thing for Skenes. Skenes is going to get up to, I don't know if they have a firm limit on him, but if they go to the playoffs, he'll be, if they do have any kind of limit.
That'll be why they missed the playoffs.
I'd have to look. I don't know if they're still doing this, but I remember Shelton getting under scrutiny with Jones. They were making him go 5 and dive, and they pulled him from a start against the Mets. I think it was at 60 pitches. It was like 5 innings, 1 hit, 2 walks, and like 6 strikeouts. Derek Shelton said, he's got an innings limit. I got to get him out of here so I can use him later on in the season. And as a baseball,
it's going to happen.
Last year, Jared Jones threw 125 innings, so my guess is they'll let him get to like 150.
Yeah.
He's at 90 right now, so they're doing a pretty good job of maintaining
that's your 5 and dive,
that limit for him. And with Skenes, last season he ended up throwing in total, let's see here, 128 innings. So yeah, they're probably around 150, and he's right now at like 130. Or he's at like 90.
And like I tinfoiled this. I tweeted this out the other night with Gordon Graceffo. I kind of wonder if the Cardinals are that part of their thinking and their decision making with Graceffo in his start recently was an innings limit. He's already at basically where he threw last year, which is like 89. So you expect him to get around 110, 120.
Yeah.
Well, if he's going to be starting every day, he may not be able to do that. And I think that's why Mo has publicly said, like, hey, I wonder if Graceffo could come out of the bullpen.
They've been wondering that for a while, though. Like last year, they flirted with the idea of him as a bullpen arm as well. Somebody on the text line said, guys, if Skenes was on the Cardinals, you'd be praising the Cardinals for the decision. Absolutely not.
No, I'd be crushing them right now.
I crushed them when Sonny Gray is out there dealing, because I know it worked for the Pirates, and I think it's worked for the Cardinals all season long for the most part. But to me, who do I want? My ace on 100 pitches going into that 8th inning, or do I want one of my best bullpen arms? I want my ace because there's no matchup that scares me with him.
He's T-Bone. That's Alex. I'm BK. Coming up next, One's Got to Go here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendricks here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals start a 4-game set with the Chicago Cubs tonight. 7:15 will be first pitch. Kyle Hendricks will be on the mound for Chicago. Sonny Gray will get the start for St. Louis. And today on the show, we had the chance to catch up with the newest St. Louis Blues defenseman, Ryan Suter. And if you missed that, you can check it out on the podcast page after the show at 101ESPN.com or via the free 101 ESPN app. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, let's play a game of One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's got to go. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Let's start out with this one, Alex. One's got to go. Right-handed bats at the trade deadline edition.
All right. The biggest need of this Cardinals team.
Mark Hanna, Justin Turner, Lane Thomas, Tommy Pham.
I'll say Justin Turner because I think they do need another outfielder. And Justin Turner is like Matt Carpenter 2.0. I think Tommy Pham would be awesome for this team. I would love Tommy Pham for this team, even though I think the players might actually not like Tommy Pham for this team.
There's a good chance him and Contreras would fight.
I love it. A nice fight, too.
I think he would be a good fit for this Cardinals team.
I mean,
a year ago, I wouldn't have said the same thing.
I mean, there'd be some good conversations in that clubhouse.
I think Tommy and Wilson and Sonny and Lance Lynn.
Tommy's the kind of guy that
some similar mindsets in terms of their intensity.
Trains for the postseason like Aaron Donald used to train with knives. Yeah. That's what I picture it as. But I'll say Justin Turner's going to go because I just don't think you need another infielder. I know he's a great hitter against right-handed pitching, but I would much rather have that same element, but as an outfielder.
I would say Justin Turner as well because I like Turner. I like all 4 of these options. I think they want somebody that can play the field. I don't think they want another DH type where you're very limited in what he can do.
I think I'd go Lane Thomas.
You hate Lane Thomas.
I don't
he
trust
just hates
it.
him because I love him.
I don't trust
I like him
dude.
too. And
I think the pressure got to him. I don't know what he would. I don't know what he would look like in a pressure-packed situation. I know what these other guys look like.
He can't be worse than Goldie or Arenado under pressure.
I know, but that's not the alternative. My alternative is Mark Hanna, Justin Turner, or Tommy Pham. I've seen those guys.
Why can't guys grow?
Moments.
Huh? Why
they can? I just don't want to know. I don't want to find out if he's grown here. He's doing it with the Washington Nationals right now when there is no pressure. There's no pressure on that team whatsoever. And good for him, dude. He's made a legitimate career for himself. He is a starter in the big leagues. He is more than capable. Somebody should trade for him that needs somebody that can hit against left-handed pitching. I just don't think that team should beat the Cardinals. If they do, though, I'll convince myself that it was a good decision.
Oh, you know
one's got to go.
the
Starting pitching at the deadline edition. Yusei Kikuchi.
He stays.
Eric Fetty. Zach Eflin. Or Tyler Anderson.
Oh, Tyler Anderson. Yeah. Get this guy out of here.
Over Zach Eflin.
I don't
like either of them, but yeah, I don't need another Harry Houdini on the mound for 5 innings.
If I could get rid of 2, Eflin would be on this list.
Oh, yeah.
But
I think I would go Eflin.
I'd go Anderson. Everything that Eno described to us and looking at the peek under the hood.
You guys hated John Gant and Dakota Hudson. Yeah. That guy sounds like he's both of them.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dakota in AAA.
Technically, our ace is available.
Now, Zach Eflin, decent strikeout rate, never walks anybody.
I'll take it.
Gives up a decent amount of hits.
I've seen the Cardinals work with that. Look at the rotation this year.
3 of the guys are that right now.
Yeah, that's basically Kyle Gibson.
Yeah.
In fact, he might be their favorite target.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. One's got to go summer edition. Mosquitoes, sweltering heat, or rain? For me, it's the mosquitoes.
Loves rain.
Get rid of the mosquitoes, dude.
Yeah.
I hate mosquito bites.
Dude, I'm getting rid of the sweltering heat.
Got one right now on my arm.
Dude, put bug spray on.
Mad.
They create bug spray so you don't have to worry about the mosquitoes. You know
I
what
do
they
mosquito
don't create?
spray in my backyard, so I'm good
They create
there.
an umbrella so you don't have to be rained on. You know what they don't create for the heat? Anything to make it anywhere to where it is satisfactory.
You know
it
what?
sucks.
Get yourself a pest control guy like me, you know? Just give me a call.
I literally use your family.
That's true. That's true. You should probably call him and get him out there for that. I actually am with BK. I get rid of the mosquitoes. I can handle the sweltering heat. Typically, it's not sweltering hot out when I sit outside in the evening. And you know what destroys my opportunity to sit outside in the evening? Looking like BK with mosquito bites all over.
Put some bug spray on.
Bug spray doesn't work when you got them that bad.
No, it does.
No, you're the kind of guy that's like, well, I love the frogs ribbiting in my backyard at
Dude,
night.
that is peaceful.
No, it's not. Just like mosquitoes.
314-399-9646 is the air covered service text line for One's Gotta Go. One's Gotta Go ballpark food, bratwurst, hamburger, hot dog, or nachos.
I mean, you know my answer here. It's nachos. You can't eat nachos at a ballpark.
My honest answer for the Cardinals is the Chinese food. I can't believe people eat Chinese food when it's like 100 degrees outside watching a baseball game.
Only that was one of the four
crazy
options.
to me. Yeah, I know.
Sorry, it's not actually in there.
Just wanted to get my thoughts out on that.
It's nachos, man. I don't
those
need
kind of opinions to your Twitter,
agree with
okay?
Alex.
nachos at ballpark are chips and cheese in a little cup that has a film on top of it.
I'm with you. I probably don't want to get those kind of nachos when I'm at the ballpark, but I don't want a hamburger at a ballpark. You know, I'm thinking hot dog, brat, nachos, that fits. Pretzel with cheese. A hamburger doesn't fit a baseball ballpark to me, so it's the one that's got to go.
All right, one's got to go. Battlehawks, City, Cardinals, or Blues. It's Battlehawks for me.
Yeah, that's why I got caught.
Yeah, minor league football.
Cardinals,
MLS
probably.
is like the 8th best league in the
Cardinals
world.
probably, because they haven't done anything since 2011.
One's got to go. Cookies, cupcakes, cake, or brownies.
Oh, mine. Easy cupcake here. I think cupcakes are trash.
I don't eat much cake. I would rather eat a cupcake than cake.
Such a BK thing to say, you know?
You get that with some ice cream.
I mean,
I love brownies. A good brownie, dude.
Oh, yeah.
I bet I know why.
Cookies, too.
Never let BK serve you the brownie.
I would say I'm
Just
with
wait
Alex.
about 2 hours. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I would say I'm with Alex. It's cupcakes.
I mean,
for
essentially,
me.
you
There's just
get a-
not very many like great cupcakes.
Well, essentially,
out there.
just get a small slice of cake. It's the same thing as a cupcake, only you don't need to peel the crap off of it.
No, there can be some filling in a cupcake.
Yeah, that's
What,
true.
You never be filling in cake, too. Have you ever heard of an ice cream cake?
Sure, but cupcake's better. It's pre-portioned for you, ready to go.
Agree to disagree. I vehemently
I
disagree.
also don't need it in the icing. The icing, take it off.
Well, the
I
icing
go
on
like an awkward like bite in.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
like,
and you
gets
get
on
more
my nose.
icing on your face than
Yeah.
you. They
No,
put
I'm
too
talking
much
like,
icing on
Whether it's
cupcakes.
cakes or cupcakes, I don't need your icing. Just take it off for me.
Interesting. I could go with some
Oh, I
icing
do too.
on my cake.
Those cookie cakes, I scrape the icing off
I'm
and I just
good.
eat the cookie.
I don't
I
need
don't
your
like
icing.
icing.
That. But like a chocolate cake, maybe a little layer of some frosting on it.
good.
I love me some chocolate cake, man.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, The Rewind here on 101 ESPN. Hey, if you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Center.
If you go over there, you'll see our conversation from earlier with Ryan Suter, the new Blues defenseman. He explained what he thinks his role is going to be here in St. Louis. I also thought he gave you some good insight into his mentality, where he's at this point in his career. He's going to be 40 years old this upcoming season. He's not the same person, not the same player that he once was, and I think he recognizes that. I thought that was interesting to hear from him, so you can check out that full conversation at 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. We also talked to Eno Sarris about the Cardinals' potential trade options as we get closer and closer. We're now just a few weeks away from the trade deadline. He said Yusei Kikuchi, Max Scherzer, those would be his two top targets if he was in charge of the St. Louis Cardinals. Alex, finishing things out here today, the Cardinals have one more series prior to the All-Star break. They're going up against the Cubs this weekend, a huge weekend series, 4 games in 3 days with a doubleheader tomorrow. What are you anticipating in this one? What are you looking for from the Cardinals? Because I think it's a chance to basically stamp out the Cubs for 2024.
Yeah, and I think it's also your last opportunity to get a good look at this rotation before you hit into this final stretch. And if I'm the front office, I'm looking at this saying, all right, my last litmus test of deciding what I need to upgrade over, because you're going to get Sonny Gray, Miles Mikolas, you're going to get Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson.
All top 4 guys.
And now those are the guys I think you're looking at, and we asked Dino that. I think you're looking to upgrade over at least 2, maybe 3 of those guys. So I'm expecting that. You're right. It's an opportunity to put away the Chicago Cubs. I'd like to see this Cardinals team figure out a way to eliminate the competition that's not in the 9th inning. Put them away early and get a little bit of an easy ride into the All-Star break.
Yeah, I think it's try and put away the Cubs. You're getting a good break. No Bellinger. Not going to see their top 2 pitchers in Imanaga or Justin Steele. I think the thing for me that I'm keeping an eye on the Cardinals this weekend is what's the bullpen look like? They've had, 2 of the last 3 days have been off. They had the doubleheader on Thursday, and it was just hopefully just a blip on the radar. But there have been some signs that the bullpen is starting to wear down a little bit. I think that's something to keep an eye on here in this 4-game set. Now, I wouldn't read too much into it because they will get 5 days to kind of reset after, but it is something to keep an eye on it because if this bullpen doesn't pitch well, the Cardinals won't play well.
The Cubs have won 6 of their last 7. They're playing good baseball right now. They're hitting and they're pitching. Their last 7 games, here's what they've done. 10-2, 5-1, they lose 7-0, and then 5-0, 9-2, 4-0, 8-0. Other than the game that I specifically referenced that they lost, they won every single one of those games. They're blowing teams out right now. This is not the best time to get the Cubs. You're seeing Cy Hendricks later on this evening. He's going up against Sonny Gray, though. That should be a win. You should win that game. Okay. Kyle Gibson on Saturday, should win that game. Miles Mikolas going up against Jamison Tyot, you should win that game. That's 3 out of the 4 games that I think they should win. Put them down, man. This is an opportunity to basically put an end to the Cubs season. If you win, if you sweep them, they're done.
And
absolutely done.
If you split or for some reason you lose this series, that's where I think there should be a little bit more panic of this team might fall out of the wild card race.
If they split, but if they lose 3 out of 4, it's not a great look.
But they would be
if you win 3 out of 4, you're feeling good about it.
If they lose the series, though, they would be the pick and should be the pick of that team that might fall out of the National League playoff race.
The Cardinals?
Yeah, if you lose 3 of 4 to the Chicago Cubs.
It's not what you want.
Especially after being swept by the Royals.
I don't want to put too much emphasis on any one individual series. The Royals are a good team. You lost to them. Bad day. Wipe it clean. You've got a fresh bullpen. Should be going into this weekend feeling good about yourself. Before we get out of here, guys, call your shot. Who do the Cardinals take at number 7 overall in this weekend's MLB draft?
I'm going to say Hagen Smith. He's there, and they take the left-handed pitcher.
That's who I was going to go with, is the lefty.
I think they take the high school shortstop. I think they end up going with him. Bryce Rayner, shortstop out of Harvard, Westlake, same school as Jack Flaherty. I think that's who they end up taking.
We've got that coach's number.
7
man, and we could get his former teammate, Jack Flaherty.
For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We will talk to you guys on Monday at 11 a.m. You have a fantastic weekend. Last weekend with Cardinals baseball for a week or so. So enjoy that. We'll talk to you guys on Monday, recap everything from this weekend here on 101 ESPN.